been saying it because I'm doing really well in the polls. If they're good. No, I like them this month. But no, I honestly believe that there's probably a lot of fraud. I had a poll, Washington Post, ABC, in the Hillary thing, on Wisconsin. They had the birds.
So I'm back again, of course, and we're gonna play some One Piece. Probably put in an hour or so. And I'm probably gonna jump on some Skyrim or something. But the Donald Trump Rogan podcast came out last night, I guess, or what did it say?
You want to see
14 hours ago, 12.5 million views. I was about an hour and a half in. I'm gonna smoke a cigarette and whatnot and relax, but I'm gonna let this play while I'm smoking, and it should be about at the place I left off at when I come back in. Tia, what it tia?
The bird cemetery, go under a windmill someday that hasn't been cleaned out with all the bird carcasses. It's like massive amounts of.
Well, they're
birds.
also a massive eyesore. I went to a ranch in South Texas. We had to drive past this enormous windmill farm. It's gross. It's dystopian. You're looking in the left and the right, and all you see is these big spinning machines that aren't even that effective at generating electricity.
Correct. Most expensive form of electricity is a windmill, and then they start to rust and rot.
And you have to
and then they
replace
get
them.
abandoned by the people that built them. Because
Well, you have to get rid of all that material too. When you replace those blades, now you have a problem because you have
Can't
to
bury 'em.
dispose. Right, you have to dispose these enormous windmills. And how
By
do
the
you
way, they
dispose
say
of
you
them?
can't bury them. So I even question that, but I'm not going to get into it. But they say you can't bury the blades. So you have the blades, and you can't bury the blades. You can bury the blades. It's not going to matter. You can bury them. You'll find areas you can bury. But they come up. This is what I mean. They come up with this. But the environmentalist dream is windmills everywhere. You know what happens to them? After 5 years, they start to rot. After 10 years, you have to replace them. Did you ever look at certain parts of California where they have heavy windmills and they've been abandoned, and they're all different manufacturers and all different companies, and they all?
I haven't seen that.
It is the ugliest thing. It looks like a graveyard almost, a graveyard of windmills.
It's pollution.
It's so bad.
It's
And in
no
the
more,
oceans.
It's no different than leaving garbage on the ground.
How about in New Jersey, off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build. The people are going crazy not to build them, but where you have them, the whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
What is happening with the whales? I've read about this.
Well, they say that the wind drives them crazy. You know, it's a vibration because you have those,
Right.
those things are 50-story buildings, some of them.
Right, and they're
50.
super sensitive to vibrations
They have
and
those,
sounds.
the wind is rushing, the things are blowing, it's a vibration, and it makes noise. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales freaking crazy. And
Yes.
something happens with them. But for whatever reason, they're getting washed up on shore, and and yet the environmentalists
Conveniently ignored by the
but the
environmental people.
environmentalists, they don't talk about it.
Right.
I think there's nothing uglier. I see it in Scotland. I see it all over the world. You have this beautiful valley. It's been there for, in civilization, thousands of years, but millions of years. And all of a sudden you have these ugly windmills up.
Would your
And the
plan to be
environment.
replace that with nuclear? What would you do?
Well, nuclear is better. I mean, I think there's a little danger in nuclear, but, we had some really bad nuclear. They did one in Alabama. They did one in, I think, South Carolina. They do them wrong. They build these massive things. Then the environmentalists get in. I don't want to go into a long story because it's too long for the show. This show is too valuable to talk about concrete. But they have hardened concrete. It's number 12 concrete. It's harder than steel. It's incredible. They put up a wall and an inspector comes along and goes, nope, you're a quarter of an inch. The wall might be 8 feet wide. You're a quarter of an inch too short. I'm sorry, you got to rip down the wall. Because it's got to be poured contiguously, right? You're 1/4 of an inch. I'm sorry, rip down. You can't rip it down. This stuff you can't put a hammer through it. You can't. It's incredible. Concrete technology is unbelievable. What's happened? You think of concrete.
So you think that's an example of overregulation?
Yeah,
Pointless
no. Well, you have an
overregulation.
inspector that comes along and he says, take down it.
People ask me all the time, Chris, if you could only take one supplement for the rest of your life, which one would it be? The answer is easy. Redwood. You see, Redwood is a powerful natural blood flow boosting supplement. When your blood flow is healthy, everything else in your body works better because your blood is shuttling nutrients to all different areas of your body. When your blood flow is poor, you experience cold hands and feet constantly, brain fog and stress issues, athletic performance problems, bedroom performance problems, stiff joints and achy muscles, and energy and stamina issues. But when you correct poor blood flow problems using Redwood, everything changes because you're able to finally get the right nutrients to all the right places. More nutrients to your brain means better focus, better memory, and better sleep. More nutrients to your gut and your immune system means that you're able to naturally strengthen your immune system even when other people around you's immune systems are compromised. More nutrients to your muscles means that you're going to have less stiff, achy joints and muscles, and you're going to be able to recover a lot faster. And more nutrients in all areas of your body with better blood flow means you're going to have more energy, more stamina, better bedroom performance, and healthier hormones. Everything gets healthier when your blood flow is healthy. If you're ready to restore your biological roots of blood flow boosting, to experience the benefits of amazing blood flow, endless stamina, incredible performance in the gym and your relationship, a better mood for both you and your significant other, and a leaner, more muscular physique, then give Redwood a try for the next 30 days. It will massively improve your blood flow, guaranteed your money back. Click through to the next page to read thousands of reviews from happy customers who have improved their blood flow and their everyday quality of life using Redwood.
And like the vault is free. I gain more value out of the vault than like this freaking $4,800 program I bought. And you guys seem like you guys are just out there to like help people. You're not trying to take people's money, you know.
Everything, the supply and demand and stuff like that, you definitely know what you're doing, bro. The techniques that you teach, and it's the real deal.
Dude, honestly, like, your stuff is man. Like, out of all the stuff that I've come across.
I don't have a Discord or course to sell you. In fact, I want to give you my proven and back-tested trading strategies for free. Stick with me for the next 30 seconds and I'll hand you the strategies that made me become a full-time trader. You see, after trading for 6 years, I know how hard it is to trade the right way. I have tried everything, from support resistance to order flow to EMAs, and none of it has worked. Even between that and my 9 to 5, the reality of becoming a full-time trader seemed impossible. Until I started learning the secrets of how smart money moves the markets. And once I started trading with them, it got a whole lot easier. And that's how I've been able to travel the world and trade full time for the last 2 years. Because I started trading with strategies that were proven to work and just copied what the pros were already doing. And I want to give you that same opportunity, which is why I've created The Vault. The Vault is my free community that now has over 3,000 students in it. The best part is they are all crushing it. And not only are my proven and back-tested strategies in there, but my 6-figure trading coaches are inside as well. And they live trade every single week, showing you exactly where to buy and sell. And if that's not enough for you, I've also added in my personal scanners, templates, and tools that allowed me to scale past $100,000. And I'm giving this away to you for free, so you can not only learn to trade the right way, but learn to trade with your 9 to 5.
$25 zillion wall. These things ended up costing $25 billion. And one of them never got opened. But here's the story. So France does it. France is largely nuclear. And they build small, little, compact plants. And if they need more, they build the same thing and they hook it up. And they hook it up. Because they get too big and too complex and too expensive. And it is very clean. They say it's absolute. You know, my uncle, I had a great uncle who was a great genius, just like other members of my family. But he was a professor at MIT for, I think, 41 years. He was the longest. When I was in the White House, the head of MIT, Princeton, and Harvard came out to me. And the MIT person said, I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John Trump. He was our longest serving professor. He was a great genius, said, you know how. And he had, he knew everything about nuclear, from math to chemistry to nuclear, he knew it. And he said, someday it's going to be the way to go, but the problem is so dangerous in terms of war. He said, Donald, someday, and this was a long time, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, he said, someday you'll have a little satchel at your side, and you'll go into a building and you'll be able to blow up New York City. I said, Uncle John, that'll never happen. He's right. You know, he's right.
Well, that was
the
part of the
power
problem
so
with giving nuclear power to other countries, right? Like, that was the problem that happened with India and Pakistan. They got nuclear power, and then they were able to weaponize it.
The biggest problem in the world today is not global warming, it's nuclear warming. And we have idiots that are negotiating for us. We have a guy that doesn't make it past 4 o'clock, and it's not because of age. I know so many guys in their late 80s, and they're better than me. I said to one guy the other day, I think you're smarter than you were 25 years ago. I've known him a long time. He's 89 years old. He's sharp. He's great. Biden gives people a bad name because that's not an age. I think they say it because I'm 3 or 4 years younger. I think that's why they say it. They say his age. It's not his age.
He's
got a problem.
2 major brain
operations.
surgeries.
Yeah. He did. Those are not good operations.
And you see what he did today? He went running towards the camera and made some apology to Native Americans. And he said that's why he's headed out west. Like, he's off the reservation, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
It's interesting because during the debate, I was looking over. I'm saying, this is strange. It's just sort of like strange things were happening.
Yeah.
But
he couldn't keep it together. But do you think they knew he couldn't keep it together? Do you think that they wanted that? Is that why, like, historically, that debate was earlier than they've been in the past, right?
I think they wanted to. Well, there's a lot of theories. A lot of people said, "You do the debate now, and we'll get him out."
Right.
I think that maybe could be.
Well, that is what happened.
But
so it's logical.
I think they also said, "Do the
debate.
debate now and get it over with."
Right.
I don't think anybody thought he was going to get out. Really.
It didn't make any sense.
The debate got him out, but I think it's very unfair. Look, you have a bad debate. His numbers went down, but I think she's not doing very well right now, and I think she looks.
Well, I want to get to that too because it's hard to know. Like, the whole poll thing is very bizarre for most people because most people don't answer polls. So they read the polls and they're like,
you ever called?
I never called.
If
I did, I'd hang up.
I was never called by a poll.
If I did, I wouldn't answer. I'm busy.
You know how polls are done? I'd go, I'm going to get myself in trouble. So I really don't believe too much in that.
Well, 2016 taught a lot of people about the ineffective.
Well, they were very ineffective because I thought I was doing well. I'd go to a place and I'd have 30,000, 40,000 people. Hillary would go, they have 500 people, and they tell me I'm going to lose. I said, why am I going to lose? I had 40,000 people, she had 200 people. But, I have a theory. Pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. They charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble.
You think it's bullshit?
I think they sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51 to 49. They announce it, and everybody says, "Oh." You understand? I don't think they. I think a lot. Look, I'm a very common sense person. I think that they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll. What's the difference between 49 and 51? 47 and a half.
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of the population. I don't think it's representative of the overall population. I just don't think
I don't know of one person in my whole life that ever got called by a pollster.
Exactly. That's my point. So, here's my question.
But I shouldn't say that because I'm doing really well in the polls.
But I think that's...
So this week I happen to believe in a verse. I only believe them if they're good. No, I like them this month. But no, I honestly believe that there's probably a lot of fraud. I had a poll, Washington Post, ABC, in the Hillary thing, won Wisconsin. They had me down 17 points the day before the...
See how I use an ad blocker. Very mindful, very demure. I'm not watching ads like the rest of you.
Election. I knew it was wrong because I had a rally. I had 29,000 people at a racetrack, and it was like 0 degrees. Wisconsin. And they had me down 17 points. In other words, you had no chance. And I won. And I called up my pollster, who's a good guy, good guy, and I believe he's legitimate. And, and some of them are, and some of them aren't. I said, tell me, why did they have me down so much? I mean, nobody's going to believe them the next time. They said they don't care. When you're down 17 points, people are going to stay home. They're not going to vote.
Right.
Because they're going to say, I love Trump, but I'm not going to waste my time. It's cold out. I said, but why don't they make it 4 or 5? He said, at 4 or 5, they're going to go and vote. At 17, they're not going to go and vote. So think of it. I was 7. This is the Washington Post ABC poll. I was down 17 points in Wisconsin, and I won. It's crooked stuff.
There's a lot of crooked stuff, and I wanted to talk about that too, because one of the things that people talk about with you is the denial of the results. And I think J.D. Vance did a brilliant job the other day when he was being interviewed, and they asked him, did Trump lose the 2020 election? And he turned it around and said, was there legitimate election interference in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story on social media? And was that a concerted effort?
Well, they said a 10-point difference, and I lost by one tenth of a point.
It is.
They say it was 22,000 votes, but look, it was much more than that. And I appreciate JD for saying that. And by the way, I think he was a great pick. Do you like JD as
I like him a lot. Yeah.
You're allowed to say that.
No, I do. I like him a lot.
I
think he's a brilliant guy, and I think his ability to talk like a normal human being. You did my friend Theo Vaughn's podcast,
right.
And he just did it.
How did he do it?
Did great. He just talks like a normal human being.
Is that why you called me to do it?
No. We really. I was.
He was a nice
once they
guy.
shot you, I was like, you got to come in here. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing.
Timing's
I think
good.
our timing's perfect. Do you even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
What are we saying? What are you gonna do?
I don't know. It's zicked right there.
It heals up pretty fucking good, man.
Pretty good, yeah. It's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't get
It's a little bit-
cauliflower.
No. It was sort of like a top shot. The point of the bullet was over the end. But you see, the things take it off a little bit. But it makes me a tougher guy. The fighters love their. Bo Nickel, he's a great fighter.
Yeah, I love Bo Nickel.
How's he going to do? I think he's
He's great. He's a fantastic
He was
fighter.
almost like undefeated in college.
He's a fantastic wrestler and one of the best mixed martial
When
artists.
is he fighting again?
He's fighting in Madison Square Garden in November.
Oh, that's going to be after the election.
Yep.
So I'll either go as president or I'll be depressed and I won't bother. Yeah, I think they're having a fight right now.
One of the things that was fascinating also was the denial of the election results is a pretty common thing. Hillary Clinton famously denied that she called you an illegitimate president. She said that Russia put you in place.
Even though she conceded.
Yes.
She conceded the night of the election because she was beaten.
Yes, and it was a thing that was pretty common for people, especially Democrats, to deny the elections. There's been many of them. The Bush administration, the dangling chads, all that.
Well, look at these guys in Congress. All these sleazebags in Congress that are Democrats, they're still denying 2016. But now they don't so much because, they try and pin it on me. You don't hear them say
But here's my
they
point.
denied it right up until the end.
My point is, this idea of election fraud is a forbidden topic, and you get labeled an election denier. It's like being labeled an anti-vaxxer if you question some of the health consequences that people have had from the COVID-19 shots. Oh my God, you're an anti-vaxxer. If you say, and what I say publicly, and I've said this a lot, it's not 0%. So if you ask me what is the amount of election fraud in this country, is it 0%? No one thinks it's 0%. I've never met one person, not a super liberal, progressive, far left person or a right-wing conservative. Not one person thinks it's 0%. They think when you have human beings and also you have a lot of weirdness that was going on during the 2020 elections, particularly with mail-in ballots.
And you had legislatures that had to approve, and they didn't approve, and they went out and did it anyway. And you had old-fashioned ballot screwing. I mean, you had, you have people going up and dropping in phony votes. You had unsigned ballots, et cetera, et cetera.
There's certain people that
Remember,
think that they have, and the rhetoric is also that you're Hitler, and that in order to stop Hitler, you have to do whatever it takes.
That was okay,
Yeah, and this is, you're hearing this now. Kamala compared you to, said your love of Hitler yesterday.
Kamala's a very low IQ person. She's a very low IQ. I'm for taking tests, too. I think anybody that runs for president should give them tests. And it's not an age thing. It's not based. If you look back on history, 70s and 80s, some of your greatest leaders in the world history, long-time world history.
Once Human is a strange but very interesting open world game with massive bosses you can tackle all.
They were in their 70s and their 80s. But I think you should take cognitive tests. I think everybody, they say it's unconstitutional. But I
That's
think
ridiculous.
I think Kamala should have a test because there's something missing. There's something wrong with her.
Well, I think it's pressure. I think the pressure and the scrutiny, you've been a celebrity for a long time and you understand what this is like. But for someone who's in her late 40s, who becomes the vice president, who runs for president, becomes the vice president, and then all of a sudden the weight of the world is on your shoulders and there's all these people paying attention. A lot of people clam up.
But you either have it or you don't.
Correct.
Look, this is an interview. We've covered a lot of territory, right? And you know, it's fine. I don't care. I want to. I think it's much more interesting. She to do an interview with Anderson Cooper, a softball, crazy softball interview. She took 2 days off and she studied all day long, and then she comes out with a result that was a real embarrassment. That was a really bad interview. She couldn't answer a question, and every question's not answered. I mean, like, what would you do your first day in office? Okay, I'll build a wall. I won't build a wall. There's 100 things you can say. Just say anything, right? There's something off with it.
Well,
we're dealing with the smartest people. They hate when I say, you know, when I call President Xi, they said, he called President Xi brilliant. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, whether you like it or not. And they go crazy.
Right,
Say,
it doesn't mean he's not evil, or it doesn't mean he's not
of course not.
dangerous.
But actually, we have evil people in our country.
Yes.
If you have a smart president, he can deal with Russia. He can deal with all of it. Russia would have never gone into Ukraine if I were president.
How would you have stopped it?
Automatic, 2 things. I told him. I said, Vladimir, you're not going in. I used to talk to him all the time. You're not going in. I can't tell you what I told him because I think it would be inappropriate. But someday he'll tell you. But he would have never gone in. But you know why else he wouldn't have gone in? Oil prices at $40 a barrel wouldn't have allowed him, wouldn't have given him the money to prosecute that war. Wouldn't have given him the money. I said it with President. I was with President Xi. I said it was almost the same conversation. With Vladimir, it was Moscow. With President Xi, it was Beijing. It was almost the exact same conversation. I said, don't do it. He would have never done it. The day I left, they flew 28 bombers over the middle of Taiwan. 28 bombers. And it's the apple of his eye, and the same thing with Russia. It's the apple. Ukraine is the apple of his eye. I used to talk to him. I had a very good relationship with him. He wouldn't have done it. He would have never done it. But he also wouldn't have done it because of Bill. You know, one of the reasons that what happened is, number one, he doesn't respect Biden at all. Not even a little bit. And who the hell would? But he doesn't respect him. But when he saw what happened in Afghanistan, how horribly that was handled, number one, you take the soldiers out last, not first. Okay, that was their big mistake. And we had that thing charted out, and they weren't obeying us. They weren't. Abdul was the head of the Taliban. Boom, boom, he had to do all these things. Some he didn't do. I said, nope, you're not doing. You got to do them all. This guy he immediately took he left the equipment behind. 13 soldiers did, but he took everybody out. He took his soldiers out before. A child would know. That's where Milley was so stupid. He was such a stupid guy, Milley. Okay, those generals should have all been fired. The people that were involved with Afghanistan should have all been fired. Then they'd be writing books about him, how stupid he was, how bad he was. But you take your soldiers out last. I had a big rally and I saw a child in the front row about a year and a half ago. And I called the child up. I said, do you mind if I borrow your child? Oh, yes. He came up. The kid's 5 years. I gave him quick details. You know. I said, we want to get out of this place. And we have this, and we have this, and we have the equipment. I gave him a little thing. I said, do you take your soldiers out first or last after everything's done? You take them out last, sir. A child would know that. We took our soldiers out first.
What was your plan?
And we left back.
Well, not only that, we left billions of dollars worth of equipment and military vehicles that they use for parades now.
The best equipment, to embarrass us, the best equipment in the world.
The Taliban parade where they've got tanks rolling down the streets and Blackhawks flying is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
We left all that stuff there. The best equipment in the world behind.
What would you have done differently?
Well, number one, we would have taken it out. Just so you go back a little bit further. I had a couple of conversations with them too. And from the time I had those conversations, because they were shooting our soldiers, with the sniper stuff, They were shooting a lot. They were shooting a lot with Obama, much less with me, but they were shooting. And I said, get this guy on the phone. The press went nuts when they heard this. I had a great conversation. It was a tough conversation. 18 months later, there wasn't one soldier that was ever shot at. And even Biden admitted it in a moment of stupidity because he shouldn't admit it. His people went nuts. He said, yeah, well, I will admit, no soldier. We didn't have a soldier killed in 18 months in Afghanistan. Not one soldier was killed because he understood what was going to happen.
Everything is designed. Everything that you read is designed. Anything that is a sign on the street is...
If that happened, I didn't have one soldier. You know, when I left, after having gotten more votes than any sitting president in the history of the country, and much more votes than he got in 2016, when I left, they started shooting our soldiers. But more importantly, what they did is they did that whole thing with, leaving. He shouldn't have left. Number one, he should have left from Bagram. Because Bagram is a massive base. It's got tremendous acreage around it. Tremendous. It's a very big. It was built many years ago. And part of the reason you wouldn't have taken that is because it goes to China. 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear missiles, you should have never left Bagram. Number one, they should have left from Bagram. They should have left last. They should have, we have Americans that are still there. They should have taken all their equipment down. Every plane, every screw should have been taken out. Every tent. And I said that. That's when I realized that Millie was a dummy. I said, we're leaving, but I want to get everything out. Sir, it's cheaper to leave it. I said, what is it cheaper to leave? Yeah, he said it's cheaper to leave it. That was cheaper. Cheaper. He said it's cheaper. Sir,
not more dangerous.
He just said cheaper. I said, I want every plane. I want every tank. I want the goggles. They have night goggles. They have all this stuff that these guys now have. He said, sir, it's cheaper to get out and cheaper to leave a $150 million brand new airplane in there than it is to fly it out with a tank of jet fuel and put it in Pakistan or just fly it directly back. It's cheaper to live. I said, this guy's nuts. I'm telling you, he was so stupid. He was so unwise. He was like an unwise man. And there were a number of them. But I defeated ISIS with the greatest generals. I had a guy who was so great. I flew to Iraq, and I met the real generals, not these idiots that we deal with. And we knocked out, I defeated 100% of the ISIS campaign. He said it would take 5 years. I did it in a matter of 3 weeks. Literally 3 weeks. And we hit them hard. And he said, so we're going to hit him here, we're going to hit him there, we're going to hit him here, there. And I said, this guy's great. I like this guy. I was told it would take 5 years. That's why I went. I said, how could it take 5 years? We have brand new fighters. We have the best planes, the best weapons, the best guns, the best bombs. How could it possibly take that long? And I flew in, left at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody knew I was going. I got on Air Force One. We started flying. And when we reached about half an hour away from Iraq, that was where the airport was, big airport. About a half an hour away, they said, sir, I'm sorry, you have to turn off all your lights. Why? We're getting close to our site on land. I said, we spent $8 trillion and we can't leave the lights on. Think of this. 20 years, $8 trillion and we can't leave the lights on in a plane. And I said, that's okay, turn the lights on. I'm not going to fight up. That's what.
This is because it's too dangerous?
Yeah, too dangerous, because they see the light up and
they'll shoot at it.
So I said, turn the lights on. Then they said, so we could also put your shades up. That's okay. I said, that's okay. The plane was pitch black. All the lights outside, the blinking, they go off the blinking reds. They were all turned on. And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times, and these guys are specimens. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise. Okay. And they're even taller. Like perfect specimens. These guys, like for a fighter, you have some guys that are perfect specimens.
Right.
And they pick the best pilots in the Air Force, United States Air Force, to fly Air Force One. And I get up there, and I'm sitting, and I'm feeling my way up. It's up high because it's 747, so you go through the stairs, but I sort of knew my way up. There wasn't a light in the plane. I'm saying, can you imagine? We spent trillions of dollars, and we're trying to fly in blind. But I got into the plane, the cockpit's dark black, little tiny light, you could see the pilot. perfect-looking human being. Co-pilot, everybody was perfect. They were all like movie stars, you know. It's like I could have cast a movie with these guys and nobody would believe it because they were too good-looking. So I said, how are we doing? Sir, we'll be landing in 10 minutes. And I look outside. There's not a light. And I'm saying, you know, I've landed a lot of planes. And you see like little lights at least. There's nothing. It's just pure desert. And I said, okay, Captain, good, but I'm looking. Now you've been in many planes where it has the computer sign saying 1,000 feet. Goes 1,900, 800. It's a computer voice, but it sounds like, but it's an incredible voice. 700. I said, Captain, are we okay? I'm looking.
Did you know that there's a specific 2,000-year-old Korean food that you...
We okay, Captain? There's no lights. And I'm looking, you know, normally when you land a plane, because I sit with pilots a lot, I think it's great. I think it's a great profession, everything. It's incredible. They're incredible. These machines are incredible. He said, sir, we're fine. No problem, sir. I said, you know, I don't see the lights up there, Captain. Sure, we're okay, you know. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. You know, problem with exaggerating, they'll tell the story. They'll say, Trump was a coward. So I'm sitting with him, he goes, 500 foot, and I'm telling you, there wasn't a light on the runway, nothing. And we're going in. You okay, Captain? Everything good? Yes, sir. No problem. We'll be down in about 1 minute, sir. And I'm telling you, Joe, you know, there's always a light. There's not a little pin. And all of a sudden, and you hear, wah, wah, perfect landing like glass. That's how good, I mean, these guys, between the equipment and it's genius. It's pure. It was so dark, you couldn't see a thing. There was no runway. You wouldn't know where the hell you're in the middle of a desert. And then I got out of the plane. I said, thank you, Captain. It's a great job. And then I got out of the plane, and I'm going down, and I see a general and another general. And I see a staff sergeant, a drill sergeant, and a various guys, all central casting. Central casting. They said, sir, would you like to rest? I said, I don't want to rest. I want to figure out what the hell are we doing with ISIS. I'm here and we can't. It's going to take years. No, sir, we could do it very quickly, sir. And anyway, we go into the room. I mean, Biden would have taken a nap for 4 days and then left without a meeting. So we go into the room, and they have these guys. I say, how long can you do it? And how long? I can do it in a couple of weeks, sir. They told me 5 years. We can do it in, he gave me a number like in no time. I said, why haven't you done it? Because the orders came in from Washington, sir, and they would come here and tell us what to do. Don't you challenge us? We're not allowed to do that, sir. That's not the military way. They tell us what to do, and we have to respect them.
So do you think that it was incompetence why they didn't go after ISIS?
I think it's a bad system. You know, when Mattis goes there or when Milley goes there who's stupid, and they tell these guys that are actually smart what to do, and the guys that are smart are saying, we don't like what they're doing, but they're not allowed to sort of counteract. Plus, the guys that went there are arrogant. You know, they're arrogant fools. They're like stupid fools. The way they pulled out of, you know, the way they, as an example, the way they pulled out of Afghanistan with the people falling off the planes. So it was worse than Vietnam with the helicopters falling. It was so bad. There was no reason for it. Anyway, so we knocked them out, and I mean, we have great military. We have great people, but not the television guys. And I rebuilt the military, and then they gave a chunk of it. I have to tell you, as much as it is, it's a tiny little piece, believe it or not. We have an unbelievable, I rebuilt the military. I rebuilt our nuclear. And in a way, I hated to redo it, but I got to realize how powerful that nuclear is, Joe. One bomb, Israel is gone, but forget. One bomb can take out the entire East Coast. It's so bad. And I watch these poor fools talking about our oceans will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 500 years. I mean, we have people, we have countries. Right now you have 5 countries. And don't underestimate North, if you take a look at North Korea, I was there. I mean, I was with Kim Jong. I had a great relationship. I got along great with him. You know, the president, she got along great. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. Obama thought we were going to go to war with North Korea. When I met with Obama just prior to the takeover, you meet, you have this sort of a ceremonial meeting. But it lasted a long time, a lot longer than it was supposed to last. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. By the time I finished, I was North Korea. We were really, it was a little tough at the beginning, remember? Mm-hmm. He said, I have a red button on my desk. I said, I have a red button also, but mine's bigger than yours and mine works.
I like how you call him Little Rocket Man.
I said, yeah, Little Rocket. I said, Little Rocket Man, you're going to burn in hell. And it was a rough, so rough that people were worried. This is crazy. And then one day I got a call, sort of like a fight. I got a call. You ever see that pounding? Then all of a sudden, but I got a call. And it was from him, meaning his people. They wanted to meet. They wouldn't meet Obama. He tried to meet. They wouldn't even talk to him about it. And I think he expected to go to war. I actually do. I believe he expected to. And we checked their nuclear stockpile. It is substantial. I mean, I said, you do anything? I got to know him very well. I got to know him better than anybody. And I said, do you ever do anything else? Why don't you go take it easy and relax? Go to the beach. You have beautiful beach, nice beachfront property. Kiddingly. I said, you're always building nuclear. Just relax. You don't have to do it. Let's build some condos on your shoreline. They actually have gorgeous stuff. And he said, I just have to do it because I need it for my safety, etc. I got to know him very well. We had no problem with him. If you have a smart problem, if you have really the right president, a smart president, you're not going to have a problem. And I say it to people, we have a bigger problem, in my opinion, with the enemy from within, and it drives them crazy when I use that term. But we have an enemy from within. We have people that are really bad people that I really think want to make this country unsuccessful. When you look at what's happening at our border, Joe, when you have people coming in that, when other countries are allowed to empty their prisons into our country with murderers, we had 13,099 murderers dropped in our country over the last 3 years.
And 15,000 rapists convicted.
Rapists?
Yeah.
Drug dealers, drug lords.
And that's just the ones that have been
terrorists. Correct. People from mental institutions.
What do you think the strategy is?
Hundreds of thousands of major criminals. Tougher and worse than anybody we have.
We're seeing the consequences of it. In San Antonio, they've taken over apartment buildings. In Aurora, Colorado, they've taken over apartment buildings. These Venezuelan gangs.
Just the beginning.
What do you think the strategy is? One of the things that they've said is that you stopped a bill from being passed. But didn't that bill also include amnesty for the people that are already here?
Yeah. This is years after the fact. The damage was already done.
But what was the bill?
Well, the
what
bill
was
was
the
nothing.
problem?
It allowed 2 million people in. They were going to get amnesty. It was a horrible bill. It didn't protect us at all.
But we should just tell people what the strategy is. So one of the things that's been their strategy. One of the things that's been very clear is that they've moved a large percentage of these migrants that are coming across the border illegally. They've moved them to swing states. Like, this is what's going on with Springfield, Ohio, right?
Swing states. Well, that's not a swing state. I'm going to win Ohio by a lot. So that's not swing. But it's called Springfield, Ohio, to be exact. And Springfield, Ohio is this very nice community of 52,000 people that just had 32,000 migrants that don't speak the language dropped into their community. You can't get into a hospital. You can't get into a school. It's gone from a beautiful little place to a horror show. And the mayor is a nice guy. And the mayor says, we're looking for interpreters. I said, no, you've got to remove them and bring them back to their country. Mostly Haitians in this case. But they speak no language. They speak no
English, man.
In fact, even the language they do speak, they can't get interpreters, they can't do anything. And the mayor's trying to be politically correct. They're all trying to be. In Aurora, Colorado, you have the worst, probably the worst gang. MS-13 might even be, those two are the worst gangs. These are Venezuela gangs. They have taken over apartment complexes, and they're going to want to take over the whole thing. And you have a weak governor, a pathetic governor, who's a radical left Democrat. He doesn't know what the hell to do. But you have it in many other communities, but they don't like to talk about it because it's, it's bad for the community to talk about it. These people have been let in here by this imbecile. And I mean, she's a low IQ person. Low IQ.
Right, but it's obviously not just her. There's a strategy that's involved in letting these people in.
She was in charge of the border.
Well, she's in charge of the border, but they utilize that app. The app that used to be used. It used to be used, I think, essentially, wasn't it for shipping? Wasn't it when people were in this country?
It was used for shipping, and now it's used to deal with the cartels. The cartel, heads of the cartel, rich people, by the way, these are loaded. These people have so much money. They would call up, think of this, they call up the app, and the app tells them where they should take their load of illegal migrants from the Congo. We have a lot from the Congo, prisons in the Congo. I made a little bit of a sarcastic joke. A man named Dana White, who you love, who I love. I assume you love.
Love that.
I think he's in a class by him.
He's probably the reason why you're here.
I don't know, maybe.
He's one of the big ones.
He is the greatest guy.
I love him.
I always say, nobody's indispensable. Everybody can be replaced. Maybe you can't be. You might not be. But Dana White, truly, I don't think. The things he sold it for $4 billion. I said, what the hell? Who the hell is going to pay $4 billion? And they made like a great deal. I mean,
it's
because of him. Take him out. I think it's a whole different.
No, he's the best.
But he's also the greatest guy. He spoke at the whole thing with, I had just been shot. He got up and he spoke so better than anybody. I mean, who would be better to introduce you? I asked of all the people, and I know the biggest people in the world, and they all would have loved to have done it. I said, Dana, would you do it? It was interesting. He was away. And he said to the people over there, one of my guys called. He said, I won't be able to do it. I just left with my wife and family. I said, he said, no, yeah. I was a little surprised, even though I knew he was very far away. He was in someplace, and he deserved it with his family, the whole thing. And then I said, all right, and so we're looking who we're going to get. And all of a sudden she comes in. Sir Dana White just said he's going to do it, and he's coming back in tonight. He's taking it. But, the guy is just an incredible guy, and he's like a tough champion, but loyal. Yeah, he's got to be one of your favorite people. He's one of my favorite people.
I've been friends with him for 23 years.
I love him. So would you have, because what you're doing here is incredible. I mean, everybody tells me. All I know is today I'm going, you're on Joe Rogan today. People are telling me, I say, how the hell do you know that? But it's sort of, what you've done here is amazing.
Do you need a free, easy way to capture your gameplay? Introducing Outplay. Record anything on your...
Where would you be if you didn't do the UFC stuff? Would you have this show, do you think?
Yeah, I would still be doing it for sure. Yeah.
Would it be at the same? Would it be at the same level?
I don't know.
But you would have.
It's hard to know. I think one of the things that works for this show, I guess, is that I'm involved in so many different things. Stand-up comedy, UFC, and all the interests that I have that lead to the podcast.
Will you always want to do UFC? First of all, you love UFC.
I love it. Yeah.
You love the fights. I mean, I watch you. You are loving it. They could pay you nothing. You'd be very.
They didn't pay me anything for the first 13 shows. I did it for free because they were hemorrhaging money, and I became friends with Dana. And my position was, you're going to give me the best seat in the house. I get to sit cage side for the fights. I was like, I'll do it, and I wanted to help. I was like, I think these are the guys that we had always hoped for. In the early days of the sport, I started working for the company in 1997. I was before the UFC was purchased by Zuffa, which Dana worked for. Wow. So I was a part of the previous owners. And I only did it for a couple of years. It was just too much, and I was losing money. And it was banned from cable because of Budweiser and John McCain, and you could only get it on DirecTV. And then
I came along, and I gave him the sites.
You did, and he loves you for that.
And he never forgot it.
He loves you for that. He talks about it all the time.
Just to interrupt you for one second. So they couldn't get a site because it was too dangerous,
right.
And everybody was against it, and they couldn't get a license. And I gave them the first 2 or 3 sites.
Yep.
And they were great. And by the way, I went to the first fight. I said, I never saw anything like this. It was crazy. It was so good. Take the best fight you've ever seen. It was like that fight, right? It was so good. Then I gave it to him again, and all of a sudden they caught on. But when I wasn't in vogue, I've had times. You probably never had a time, but I had times when I wasn't exactly in vogue. Dana, they called him. He said, he's the greatest guy. There's nobody like him. he said, I'll never say anything bad about that guy because when I needed, because they were having a hard time at the beginning. They almost pulled the plug a couple of times, right? He said he stood up and he gave us stuff that nobody else gave us and nobody wanted anything to do. And he said, I will never, and there was a time where it would have been very popular for him to say bad stuff about me. He said the greatest stuff about me. He said, you're going to try and get me to say bad stuff about Trump? I'm never doing it.
No,
So
he's a very
unusual
loyal guy.
Yeah,
very unusual guy.
He's
And
a fantastic
a
guy.
perfect guy to be at the helm of something so controversial as the UFC.
Less controversial now. I mean,
Well, now it's huge. Yeah. Well, this was always the thing that I would hope that it would be. I always knew that it was unbelievably entertaining, but I just didn't know if maybe I was crazy. Maybe I loved it because I've had this long history of being involved in martial arts, and maybe like other people who just think it's too violent. But
can boxing make it?
Yeah, boxing's still a great sport. I love boxing.
But it seems to be so unimportant now by comparison to UFC, don't you think?
I think, well, you know, Dana is working with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're going to start promoting boxing now. And with Dana at the helm of it, I think boxing could return because the thing is they want to make fights that other people, maybe, you know, promoters don't want to make because they want to protect their fighter. Controversial fights where, you know, it's dangerous. Like, you don't know, this guy could lose. And so the Saudis, they're smart. They just offer a tremendous amount of money, and they're putting together fights that no one else can put together. They're doing that in boxing.
If Dana's involved, he'll probably make it good. You know the amazing thing, though, in fighting, no UFC fighter, they say, has ever died. And it looks to be much more violent than boxing. Many boxers have died. Isn't it interesting? And Dana tells me because they take so many shots to the face.
Yes, and there's also no other options to preserve yourself, to protect yourself. So if you get hit in a UFC fight, you can clinch. You can try to take the fight to the ground. You get options. Yeah. Also, you don't get allowed to get knocked down and then get back up. When you get knocked down, you're concussed. And generally, you know, if a guy's really hurt, they can be finished on the ground. And the fight's weight cutting, you know, which is a problem with the UFC as well. But weight cutting in boxing has led to, if you look at deaths in boxing, there's very few of them in the heavyweight division. Most of the deaths in boxing are the lighter weight divisions because when guys dehydrate themselves to lose weight, to make weight, their brain is the last thing that gets rehydrated. Like, it's very difficult to completely hydrate your brain quickly. And you only have 24 hours between the weigh-in and the fight, and it used to be the weigh-ins were the day of the fight. Like when Boom Boom Mancini had a fight with Duk-Koo Kim and killed him in the ring, which is one of the last ones on television that we've seen.
That's right.
That was a crazy event for people and heartbreaking, and it led to a bunch of different changes. And one of them is day before weigh-ins to allow people to rehydrate better, and the other one is they dropped it from 15 rounds down to 12. Unbelievable. Yeah, you go back to the golden age.
Yeah, in terms of entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the championship wrestles. Those were the greatest fights
Those
ever.
last 3 rounds were crazy.
That was
brutal. I mean, it's such a war of attrition. You know, a lot of people think even like a 5-round UFC fight. The UFC is 5-minute rounds. It's so much energy you're burning out. And those last couple of rounds, those 5-round fights, the 4th and the 5th round, unbelievably brutal.
Who's the greatest UFC fighter? Are you allowed to say, in your opinion? It's tough for you to say because you do this, but who do you think is the greatest of the fighters?
There's a lot of arguments for who's the greatest of all time. You know, John Jones, most people would say is the greatest of all time. Never lost. There's certainly a really good argument for that. There's another argument for Georges St. Pierre. I always leave in B.J. Penn in his prime, Anderson Silva in his prime. You know, Mighty Mouse. People forget about Mighty Mouse because, unfortunately, he's a smaller guy. He's 125 pounds, flyweight champion. He's one of the greatest expressions of mixed martial arts I've ever seen. I think to this day.
And Khabib?
Khabib's fantastic. But if you looked at like accomplishments in terms of championship fights, Khabib retired 29-0, but he didn't have as many world championship fights.
They say
he might have lost to Gleison Tibau. He might have lost to him. He might have lost a round. And that was a controversial fight where people think that Gleison Tibau could have even got the decision in that fight. I'd have to go back and watch it again to make a decision. But
they're great athletes.
Oh, the best athletes in the world. And the most dangerous sport in terms of like, I always call it high-level problem solving with dire physical consequences.
Yeah, it's just brutal.
That's what fighting is.
You know, I'd never forget. So there was a fighter named James Toney.
Oh, yeah, I love James Toney.
He fought as a very light fighter, and he ended up as a heavyweight. I mean, this guy went through everything. He was almost like a lightweight.
He went from middleweight all the way up to heavyweight. Yeah, and Peter Vander Holyfield is a heavyweight.
And he was a real fighter.
Oh, yeah.
So James Toney, and I think it was St. George.
George St. Pierre?
St. Pierre. I think it was him. Who did he fight? James Toney?
No, James Toney didn't fight George St. Pierre.
He fought a UFC fighter.
Yeah, Randy Couture fought James Toney.
Was it?
But that was like an easy fight. That was a very easy fight. Randy Couture just took him down.
It was the most, and he's half the size.
Watch what carrots do to your dog.
I invited the man I trust with my dogs, Dr. Marty Gold.
And he just, once he got to the ankles, in fact, the announcer said, it's over.
Yeah,
and
he put him to took him down, mounted him, strangled him. It was
and
pretty
James,
quick.
but he was talking big because he was much bigger. He was a pretty big guy.
James just wanted to make some money.
You think
fight.
so?
Yeah.
But I never forgot it.
It
was over very quickly. And he was lying, sleeping on the mat, and he was talking. You know, he was doing the Muhammad Ali stuff, but it didn't work out. But I remember.
He sold the fight.
Yeah, that was Couture probably.
Yeah, it was Couture. George never fought a boxer in an MMA fight. If he did, he would kill them.
Was he one of the greatest?
Yes, unquestionably. That's the argument. There's like a handful of guys you can make the argument is the greatest of all time. People forget about Anderson Silva. In his prime, he was unstoppable. But that's the thing is, and then there's Fedor Emelianenko, who fought in Pride. In his prime, he was unstoppable. There's this.
And you have a couple now that are pretty good.
Oh, we've got so many now. Alex Pereira. There's an argument that he's the top pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. He's unbelievable. But it's like fighters can only compete at that level for so many years. And so, in my opinion, you have to judge them at their very peak. You can't judge them when they're hanging on and still fighting. You can't judge them when they're coming up. You got to judge them in that championship peak. In that championship peak, there's a handful of guys that you would consider at the very top.
If they stopped a little bit sooner, some of them would have had, you know, I mean, there are a couple of that you just mentioned without mentioning names. If they stopped, they had the perfect, they were unbelievable. And then at a certain age, they start getting knocked out, right?
Yes, it's unfortunate, but the thing is that same belief in themselves that lets them become a champion makes them think that they can do it long past the time that they actually can.
Well, Anderson Silva was essentially unbeatable. And then he lost a close one, then all of a sudden
he got knocked out. He got knocked out by Chris Weidman.
Right.
He was kind of clowning in that fight, famously, and Chris Weidman had a vicious left hook, knocked him out. And then they fought a second time, and he broke his leg on Chris Weidman.
Right.
And after that fight, he was kind of never the same because that leg break injury, which Conor McGregor had, there's quite a few fighters. Weidman actually wound up having the same injury, ironically. There's only been like
you're never the same because you can't
Never the same. Well, you can. Weidman is still kicking with that leg. You can, but psychologically, when you throw a kick and your leg snaps in half and you're in agony for a year, right? You have to get surgery. You have to get bolts and plates to keep your leg together, and then it takes forever for it to heal.
It always amazed me how the kicker, I mean, you have those cases, but the kicker will do tremendous damage to somebody's leg, but their leg doesn't seem to get damaged, isn't it?
It does get damaged. It hurts
more than you think.
Yeah, but your shin, your shin gets very numb after a while. And the guys that are really good kickers, they're kicking the thigh and they're kicking the calf, they're kicking soft areas, and they're slamming this hard, numb shin. Right. Their shin gets all these like micro fractures all over the shin, and it calcifies. Like these guys can kick baseball bats. You ever seen them break baseball bats with their shins?
No, I've never
It's crazy. Some guys can do 2 baseball bats. Someone will hold the baseball bat and they just kick right through them.
But see, I watch your enthusiasm now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why you're good at what. That's why nobody does this better. Without the enthusiasm, forget it.
Well, it has to be authentic. Like that. I mean, the only reason why I do MMA commentary is because I'm very interested in it for real. I don't have to manufacture it. I'm very interested. So I think
you love going in there after the fight and they're sweating all over you. They're slopping all over you.
They bleed on me.
They're bleeding.
Sometimes their nose.
Does that bother you a little bit? Yeah,
no.
like. No. 2 weeks ago, with a guy I never saw it.
Khalil Roundtree,
more stuff came out of his nose.
Yes, it was pretty nasty, but no, I'm very used to it. I just wanted him to be able to express himself.
You've done a great job.
Thank you, thank you. So, back to you, and back to what are you? And first of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy,
right?
And I love this "Make America Healthy Again" idea because there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been shown to be toxic. There's pesticides and herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary, and there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things. And
look at this chart to it.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me. Look at this chart. These are healthier countries. Look where the United States is. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr. Look
so
at
this
that.
is, well, something along the. I was actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
I could see it.
That's crazy.
A lot of it's obesity.
So here's the life expectancy versus health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
yeah.
that's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But look at that. Look at the USA is.
It's not good, and that's our food. That's our diet. That's sedentary lifestyle. That's our diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
But RFK is going to be very. I think he's a great guy.
I love the fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah.
And are you completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental, because he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think
just keep him out of that.
To fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out. I said, focus on health. Focus.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, but I got to be a little bit careful with the liquid gold.
I understand. But listen, there's plenty of good work that could be done if you focus on health.
Here's the one that my all-time favorite.
What is that?
See the arrow right here? That's what I love.
Do you have anyone that is pressuring you to not work with him? Have there been people
not
that
work
are
with
reaching
who?
RFK Jr.?
Yes.
Yes, I would imagine. Because financially, he could put a dent.
I would say that, and
This new Edison device powers your entire home for free. It takes less than 2 hours to set up. The parts cost.
I think in many ways they've done a good job. In many ways they've done a bad job. But I would say that the Big Pharma wasn't thrilled when they heard that. I've actually always gotten along very well with him. I've known him a long time. He's a different kind of a guy. He's very smart, great guy. And he's very sincere about this. I mean, he really is, he thinks we spend a fortune on pesticides and all this stuff, and then you end up with, that chart is a terrible chart, the one previous. It's such a bad chart when you look at where we are compared to other countries that don't spend 10 cents.
Right.
So, and you save a lot of money. But, yeah, I've had some people that aren't exactly thrilled. You can imagine, right?
Sure.
It's a good question, actually.
Well, certainly if there
it doesn't affect me.
Some pharmaceutical drugs that have been prescribed that have negative consequences that these people have been profiting off of, and then you have a guy like RFK Jr. who spends an enormous amount of time highlighting those things. You could say how they'd be very reluctant to have you support him.
I would say that's an understatement.
Yeah. So what do you do to stop that from getting in the way?
Well, look, they've come up with some amazing things. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I know you're against the certain vaccines. But like the polio vaccine, people had polio. It was like a disaster, and they came up. Dr. Salk, and he came up with a vaccine that there's no polio. Now, it's very interesting. There hasn't been polio, but now in the Gaza Strip, can you believe that? Have you heard that? There's been a big strain of polio coming out in the Gaza Strip.
Is it vaccine-derived polio? Because there's a strain of polio that comes directly from the vaccine. Because unfortunately, sometimes when you vaccinate people for polio, you actually give them polio. Yeah.
I mean, all I can do is I sit down and I listen to him, and I'll give it a total. I would love him to be right, because if he's right, it's a lot less expensive generally.
There's two things that people point to when they point to the dangers of the pharmaceutical drug industry. One thing is when pharmaceutical drugs were allowed to advertise on television. We're only one of 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical drugs to advertise on TV. The other one's New Zealand, but they're more restrictive than we are. People are worried.
Those ads, when you hear take a certain drug,
and then you hear all the consequences.
You say, it causes cancer and baldness. We don't like baldness.
Suicidal
and
ideation.
And this and that and eyesight, and you can lose your vision.
Yeah.
And I actually asked one of these guys, I would never take. I mean, because there's things that are so bad. They go through a whole list. I guess they save some liability, but man, I said, does that affect the purchase? And they say it really does. When there's something you have and you read, and then they go through the list of
side effects,
the potential side. It's not even the potential side effects.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are just. I asked that question. People hear that. When I hear it, I'm going to take a pass. It said, may affect your vision, may cause blindness, may this.
Yes. But I know you're aware of casein, right?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out, and this is a very important thing for people to understand, is what a lot of these drugs do is they act to somehow or another mitigate the effects of poor metabolic health. But most of these problems that these people are suffering from wouldn't exist if we put an emphasis on metabolic health. If people got healthier, they started eating nutritious food and taking vitamins, a whole host of these problems that people are having would go away. And the problem with that from the pharmaceutical drug standpoint is they wouldn't be able to sell drugs to these people. And this is a fear
the
that a lot of people
pesticides
have.
and things like that on the plants. And what do you think of that?
It's terrible. Well, I think regenerative agriculture, unfortunately, is very difficult to scale to a point where you got a jack-in-the-box on every corner.
Right, that's right.
If everybody wants food, and we have food deserts, and we have places like Los Angeles where no one's growing anything, and everything has to be shipped in, it's very difficult to feed that many people. We've created this incredible society where we have these enormous cities, but it's very difficult to get food to these people. And then for a lot of these people in low-income areas, the only food that's available is cheap, unhealthy food.
That's right.
And we could fix that. That's if we could send $175 billion to Ukraine, we could do something to fix a lot of the health problems that the United States has. And I think it would help us as a nation overall. If you just put it out there that, hey, as a nation, we're going to make a concerted effort to get people healthier. Just put it out there, and people start making better choices.
Well, when you look at that chart,
it's crazy.
They just gave me that chart because they said you may want to discuss this topic, which I know is a big topic for you. And when I looked at that chart and I looked at how unhealthy we are as a nation, that's a pretty big thing.
How are you so healthy?
Today, we're checking out Once Human. It's an open-world survival game set in a supernatural post.
Is it golf?
No, it's genetics, I believe. You know, I'm a big
Genetics
believer.
is a big factor.
I really am. I mean, my father was...
Unfortunately, it is a big factor for health. Some people are just way more robust. But you do play golf a lot, and that is exercise.
Both of my parents. For me, it's good.
Fresh air.
It really is. It's fresh air. You're outside. Even mentally, you're focused on that 3-footer. For a couple of hours, you're not. And I go quick. I play fast, real fast, and I'm in, I'm out. But you know, it gives me. I was never one that could like run on a treadmill. And I can do it. You know, when passing a physical, they ask me to run on a treadmill, and then they make it steeper and steeper and steeper. And the doctor said, it was at Walter Reed, they said, it's unbelievable. I could have gone, I'm telling you, I felt I could have gone all day. But I said, Doc, I can do this all day long. I have no problem. But it's boring to me. Do you understand?
Right.
It's just boring.
Golf's exciting.
But I did it for so long. They couldn't believe it that I did it. And I never did, I don't do it. I don't go, I have friends that run on this stuff all day long. But I had no problem doing it. But it's really boring. So with golf or something, or tennis or whatever.
Right.
But golf, as you get older, there's something really good about it. And you have competition.
Competition, concentration,
and it's a
focus.
great handicap sport.
And it's also a thing, I think, that's it cleans your mind, because when you're looking at a shot, that's all you can think of when you're executing.
It gives you a couple of hours. It's interesting, like with tennis, if you're much better than somebody, you can't really play with somebody. It doesn't work. You can give them sort of the equivalent of strokes, right? But it's not this. With golf, you can play with a lousy guy and give him a stroke a hole or 2 strokes a hole or something. It's a good handicapping sport.
Right.
But it gives me a little exercise. But I haven't played in a long time. I won 32 club championships.
Didn't you play right after you got shot?
No. What I did is I played with Bryson DeChambeau. Do you know Bryson?
Yes.
The pro. He's a great player. And we played, it was a certain thing that we played, I guess called breaking 50 or something. 50 would play from a certain tee, and if you can break 50. And it got tremendous ratings, sort of like a crazy thing. He's a great guy.
But wasn't that like a couple of days after you got shot?
I don't know. I know I did.
That was one of the funniest things. You were on the golf course.
I think I did, yeah, maybe I did. But I view it very interestingly. I'm running for president of the United States. To me, it's such a big deal. It's so important. So I've got now.
It's the biggest deal in the free world.
It's 100 times bigger than the Super Bowl, and it's one person.
Yeah.
So you're down to 2 people, and we start off at 9 billion, because you have 9 billion, they say, in the world. Who knows what that number is? But you get down to 350 million. Sadly, we have no idea what we have in this country, but let's assume it's 325, 350. And you're down to 2 people. It's the biggest thing in the world. And when I heard she took off yesterday and she took off the day before and she's going to take off tomorrow or the next day, I haven't taken a day off in 56 days. That's a long time. I haven't taken one day off. I don't want to play golf. This is too exciting. Golf is great, but this is too exciting. This is more exciting than anything you can do. And the
Also,
thing
it's
is,
the home stretch.
It's the home stretch. Who would take a day off? So we have 11 days left now. And think of it. So I think I've gone 54, 55 days in a row. No days off. And I make speeches oftentimes, sometimes not, but I make speeches. And when you make a speech, and my speeches last a long time because of the weave, I weave stories into it. If you just read a teleprompter, nobody's going to be very excited. You got to weave it out. So, but you always have to, as you say, you always have to get right back to it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's no good. But the weave is very, very important. Very few weavers around. But it's a big strain on your, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You got to be careful with the voice. You can lose that voice. The voice wasn't designed. I said today, so I made a big one last night. I was in Las Vegas. A big one the night before in Arizona. Big one. I mean, they're all big. But there's never been anything like it in terms of crowd. Never been close. Never been close. They say, he talks about crowds. What's very interesting? So we get crowds that are really big. I say, I've never had a story, because I don't get good press. I don't think I've had a good story in years. I really don't. I swear, I don't think you were talking about it a little bit with Oprah. Everybody loved me. I don't think, I became president of the United States. I did great the second time. I did much better. I don't want to get you in any disputes, but
when you're 85 years old on your deathbed, you're not going to wish you had fewer crazy stories. So let me introduce you to the school game.
I won that second election so easy, and not just because.
But let me get to that. I want to talk to you about that.
But here's the thing: I did that, and now I've gotten a nomination again. And don't forget, to get these nominations, you go against very smart people. Ron DeSantis was hot; you had to go through him. Nikki Haley was hot; you had to go through her. Went through everybody. Record time, right? Record time. I got 3 nominations in a row. Won the first time, did much better the second time. I get millions of votes more the second time, and now I'm doing it the third time. And it's an incredible thing. I never get a good story. I only get bad press. Now, I will say this. It's a lot easier if you're a Democrat. If I were a Democrat,
you'd get a lot of positive press.
I would get a lot of positive press.
Yeah. No, it's a creepy, corrupt business. And the media, to a large extent, acts as a propaganda arm for the Democratic Party.
It's not even believable.
Yeah, it's bizarre to watch. And most young people, I think, are aware of it. I think most boomers still, unfortunately, read the newspapers and believe in CNN.
But it's getting younger.
Yes.
It's getting for us, for a consumers.
Yes.
And
I
consider myself a person.
It's the internet. It's because the internet's giving people information that they're not getting from anywhere else. And they get like the very fine people hoax, the Russiagate hoax, all these different things that they've done, they tried to pin on you. That's like, it's a clear distortion of what you actually said.
The bloodbath hoax.
Yeah.
I was talking about the auto industry.
Yes.
It's a bloodbath because Japan and China are taking our auto, and I said, it's a bloodbath. They said, he used the word bloodbath.
You said if you don't win, it's going to be a bloodbath because they're going to take over. That's exactly
it's a terrible thing they do.
But that's the problem with propagandists, because they take things out of context, and ultimately what they do is they diminish their own credibility because people don't want to listen to them anymore because they see that they've done that, and they recognize what's going on, and they feel insulted. Their intelligence is
look at the ratings.
Yes.
Shows like yours. So I have a son who's very smart and tall, Barrett, right? And he knows all about you. He knows about guys I never heard of. He said, Dad, you don't know how big they are. They're big. He told me how big. I said, who the hell is he? Like Ross. I did. He said, Dad, he's a great guy. I mean, guys that are doing, it's a whole new world out there.
It's a different world. And
but, I'm on TikTok now.
Congratulations.
And I've done really well. No, but the crazy, have you seen the numbers? Billions of hits. It's crazy.
I'm sure. TikTok's a wild application.
And I've gone up 30 points. A Republican is always down 30 with young people. I'm plus 30. and I'm on TikTok.
I think
It's had a huge impact.
young people are rejecting a lot of this woke bullshit. Young
they
people
are.
are tired of being yelled at and scolded. They're tired of these people that they think are mentally ill telling them what the moral standards of society should be today. And people are upset.
There's a big difference now, but even in just a couple of years, I was shaking hands with people. They're young people.
The rebels are Republicans now. They're like, you want to be a rebel, you want to be punk rock, you want to like fuck the system, you're a conservative now. That's how crazy. And then the liberals are now pro silencing criticism. They're pro censorship online. They're talking about regulating free speech and that regulating the First Amendment. It's bananas to watch.
Joe, they come after their political opponent.
Well,
I got more guys. I always say, I kid, but I'm not kidding. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the meanest of them all. He'd kill you in 2 seconds if he didn't like you, right? I've been under investigation more than Alphonse Capone, only because it's political opponent stuff. And I won the big case in Florida. I'm winning the other stuff. You win, but you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent.
Yes.
I could have put Crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but they're weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once you get in office, by ignoring what they're doing right now. It's crazy.
I heard it. Somebody was defending me today. They said, they said, that's what you're doing to him. They're going, he's going to put us in jail. He's going to invest.
That's what you're
That's
doing.
what you're doing to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, will you do that? Will you do that to him? To them, if you win? The presidency has tremendous power. I could have put Crooked Hillary.
I respected that you didn't, because what you said was it would be bad for the country.
No, I couldn't even imagine. You have, first of all, Secretary of State, but more importantly, the wife of the President of the United States of America going into jail. And if you ever saw when I'd say something about her, they'd all say, I didn't say it. I never said it. They say, lock her up, lock her up. And I'd always go, take it easy, just relax. We're going to win this thing. Take it easy, take it easy. And I'm telling you, I kept it down, just the opposite. Now they say, oh, Trump wanted to put her in jail. No, I saved her from going to jail. They had more stuff on her. And Comey had it, because when Comey got up, and he stupidly, because he's a stupid guy too, he's a stupid son of a bitch. He got up, Joe, and instead of saying she's innocent of all charges, he went over each charge.
People ask me all the time, Chris, if you could only take one supplement for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
And each charge was a killer. And he'd go, and as far as her doing this, she's innocent. And this, and then she's only an unfair prosecutor for we go. But every time you heard these charges, they sounded so bad. They were bad. And all it was is he wanted more airtime. If you would have gone up and said, I've thoroughly investigated Hillary Clinton and she's done nothing that we feel is wrong, it would have ended. Instead, he wanted to be up there because he's a PR hound. He's a hog. And he starts going through and you know what he had? They had a huge problem because FBI is great. The people there, not the top people, the people, the real people, the people that work there. It's like the real generals that I told you about that defeated ISIS in record time. The FBI guys are great. I'll bet you I'd be at 95% in the FBI.
I bet that's right.
Underneath.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. So he goes with Hillary, and instead of just saying, he goes through each charge.
Right.
And even I was saying, man, those are bad charges.
Sounds terrible because
and this is before I got
with those charges.
Don't forget, this is before I got there.
Right.
Now he was trying to protect her, but he did her a great disservice.
Because he wanted attention.
He was stupid.
So I want to talk about 2020 because you said over and over again that you were robbed in 2020.
Yeah, totally.
How do you think you were robbed? Everybody always cuts you off. I'm going to allow.
Well, they not only cut you off. Well, what I'd rather do is we'll do it another time, and I would bring in papers that you would not believe. So many different papers. That election was so crooked. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, let's start from the top and the easy ones.
Okay.
They were supposed to get legislative approval to do the things they did, and they didn't get it. In many cases, they didn't get it.
What things?
Anything.
Legislative approval
like
of...
for extensions of the voting, for voting earlier, for this,
right.
for all different things. By law, they had to get legislative approvals. you don't have to go any further than that. If you take a look at Wisconsin, they virtually admitted that the election was rigged, robbed, and stolen. They wouldn't give access in certain areas to the ballots because the ballots weren't signed. They weren't originals. We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another one.
Are you going to present this ever? Like, do you think like?
Let me just give you one
okay,
more
go ahead.
before. 51 intelligence agents come up that the laptop was from Russia. It turned out to be totally false.
51 former intelligence agents, right?
They say that made. I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't matter. I lost by I didn't lose, but they say I lost, Joe, they say I lost by 22,000 votes. That's like 1/10 of 1%, less than that. It's a tiny little thing. 22,000 votes spread over, that's spread over this period. So, 51 intelligence agents lied. They lied. They knew it was. It was Hunter's. It was from his bed. It was Hunter's laptop. They said it was created by Russia. Russia. It was the Russia hoax. The Russia hoax was a big hoax. It was all a big hoax. So
well, that's clear. That's one example. That is a good example.
That's a big example. They say it made a 17-point difference. That's a big example. But that's only one. And you could go into the ballots where they wouldn't give you access to the ballots. You could go into the ballot harvesting. You could go into $500 million for the lock boxes.
But just in terms of narrative, so there's two things, right? There's the Russia hoax. There's the collusion with Russia that was never proven, right? That's one.
Well, no, it was proven it didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But they talked about it on television.
But it took 2.5 years to prove.
But not only that, but it was a constant narrative on television. So that's a constant narrative that gets into people's minds, especially low information people that just watch the news, that you're in collusion with Russia. So that's one. So that changes the narrative. And then you have the 51 former intelligence agents that work with the original Twitter and get them to remove links. You can't share it on DMs. You cannot share that story. They swept that story because they said it was Russian disinformation, even though they knew it was not.
100%.
So that's two examples that are real examples. Now, anyone who considers himself a legitimate, objective observer of American politics, if you really want the best person to win, you would want people to not lie. And the only reason why they got away with this lie was because they continually labeled you as this horrible threat to democracy and Hitler. They kept saying you were going to be a dictator, ignoring the fact that you weren't a dictator for the 4 years where you were actually the president.
I was actually the opposite of a dictator. I was a very straight guy. But look, those three things, you take those three things, each one of them by themselves causes the result to be different. Okay?
It does.
And then you can go into 100 other things. There's so many. We can't have corrupt elections, and we can't have open borders. You need to have a country. You need borders. You need fair elections. And I'll tell you the other thing you need.
GoForms makes it easy to digitize documents or build new digital forms from scratch. GoForms is the only...
You need a free and fair press. One of the things I like about doing a show like this, can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to.
I will talk to her like a human being. I will try to have a conversation with her.
If she did this kind of an interview with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her. I wouldn't try to interview her. I'd just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her on. Trying to get her to express herself just as a... I don't think these formats are good. I don't think that two people... First of all, I hate the idea of the presidential debates because I hate the idea of a time limitation on complex ideas. Also, you have to break...
I think you have to have the debates now.
Right, but the way they do the debates, I think, is the wrong way to do it. I think they should have a conversation. I think you and Kamala, you sit across the table with no one in the room but the two of you. Of course you're not going to shout at each other. Of course you're not going to insult each other.
I mean, it may get... They used to do it
that way. It wouldn't, but that would be the way to do it.
They used to do it that way.
To put cameras on you with no one interfering with press, with checking whether or not it's factual, especially when it's biased. because they checked you all those times and they didn't check her with clearly things that were inaccurate, right? So have two people just have a conversation with us without a time constraint. And also this idea that they cut off the microphone.
Well, and no crowd.
No crowd. Crazy too, because you're good at working a crowd.
I would rather have a crowd.
Of course you would.
Rather,
you're good at crowds.
But I had no. So they gave me an alternative. I don't think he wanted to debate.
Why did they want no crowd? What
Because
was the
I
argument?
think they thought I wasn't going to accept it. So I believe what they wanted to do is have me not accept. So they gave me a deal I couldn't refuse, and I said, I'll do it. Okay? It's like the mob.
Right.
I'll take it. So they came to me. They said, we'll debate Joe Biden. Yeah, that thing got tremendous ratings too. That was crazy. But we'll debate Joe Biden. But you can't have a crowd. They also wanted sitting down. I said, that's the only thing. I said, look, you gotta stand up. You can't really sit down.
Right.
You know, in the old days they did sit down a little bit, but
he gets tired.
You gotta stand up. And they agreed to it. It was a very tough thing. It almost killed it. They wanted to have like desks we sit. I said, I think we should stand up. And that was the only thing I asked for. I said, you got to stand up. I thought it looked bad for like the public, but they said no crowd and cut off the mic. And I said, I can live with it. I mean, I can live with it. And they thought I was going to reject it. And then they would say he didn't want to debate Sleepy Joe.
Right.
That's
right.
what they thought was going
Well, they tried to say that with you and Kamala as well. They tried to say that you didn't want to debate her as well.
No,
but
by the way, with her, number one, I'm leading. Number two, I didn't, they also said it with the primary. So I had like 10, 12 guys, right, in the primary. No stupid guys. I mean, they're governors and they're senators. They're not stupid people. Some are stupid, but not all of them. And all my guys said, you have to be in the debate. I said, why? I'm leading by 74 points. The closest guy to me, I'm like 60 points, 70 points higher. Why would I stand there like an idiot for 2 hours and let every one of them scream at me? I'm going to be the focus.
Right.
And I said, I'm not debating. And it was a very smart thing because, it was, they just killed themselves.
The Republican primary.
Yeah, the Republican primaries. I like debating. I think you have to debate. But
it has to be fair.
I like debating like the Rosie O'Donnell debate. I like debating when you have a great. Remember the Rosie O'Donnell?
Yeah, that was very funny. Megan,
crazy thing, Megan. That was a hell of a question, man. If I didn't come up with that answer,
it was a great line.
Well, what it was is, we had 28,000 people. That was the Cleveland Arena where the Cavaliers played.
Right.
LeBron James. I'm not a big fan of LeBron James, but he is a good basketball player. But that was and when I said that, the place went crazy. And she kept talking. No, she had like 10 other.
Yeah, well, Megan said you said it to other people, and you admitted you did. But it was funny. It was a comedic timing moment.
It was fun.
That's what they wanted to avoid.
It was lucky I did it because she was drowned. She wasn't finished. That question, but she kept talking, but you couldn't hear. To this day, they don't know what she said, but it wasn't buzzing. So anyway, but we had a good time.
Well, it's comedic timing, and that's the reason why to have a debate in front of a large audience. And then they probably thought you would
the Al Smith dinner. I got very good reviews on that.
That was great. Very funny. Very funny stuff. The Tim Wall stuff is very funny.
Tim Wall, yeah.
He's funny.
That's a real beauty.
That's a crazy one. She said that she had picked him, and this is one of the questions I want to ask her, when she was sleep deprived. She said she was suffering from sleep deprivation when she picked him, which is just like, hey, maybe take a nap.
So okay, look, let's see how it all turns out. I think we're going to win. I think we're way ahead now. I think we're way ahead. But
can I bring you back to 2020?
Lose, I think they're going to look at two things. They're going to say they should have had a primary, even if it was a short primary.
Yes.
They shouldn't have picked it. And then she's going to say, I shouldn't have picked this guy.
She shouldn't have picked that guy.
That guy's
the lying about Tiananmen Square.
Everything.
Admitted that, the military record, assistant coach versus head coach.
Yeah. Little things. So I did McDonald's last week.
I saw that.
And I actually got a call from your friends at Google, from Sundar. That's pretty good, right? He said, this is the biggest thing we've had in years.
You at McDonald's?
At McDonald's. Did you know that? It was one of the...
Well, it's funny.
Who's a great guy, by the way, but he said... This McDonald's thing, I want to tell you, it's one of the biggest things we've ever had on Google. It just hit. But the reason I did it, and I actually, you never know about this stuff. I thought it was a throwaway. I didn't think our conversation was a throwaway, but I thought I'd walk in, and that was only to highlight the fact, and I have a friend, he owns like 56 of these McDonald's, and He said, "Do you want to use one?" I said, "Yeah, I love it." So we went there, and the crowd was crazy. You know, they had 28,000 people around the whole thing. Did you see the outside? It was crazy. The cars couldn't get through. The Secret Service was not exactly thrilled. We had no idea what the hell. But I went into the place, and I did the French fry thing. And it just hit. But that's like in life. Sometimes you do. I thought it was like a quick throwaway. We're going to be there for 15 minutes. Then I said, I've worked here for 15 minutes, which is 15 minutes more than she worked here. She lied about McDonald's. And you know,
is that proven that she never worked at McDonald's?
Well, McDonald's has no information. No, she has no information. There's nobody. The manager said she never worked there. You know, it was a certain place, and he said they never. No, she lied. She's a liar. You know what they do? They'll say, like, on any one of their questions, take any, they'll say, it's the exact opposite of what I say. IVF. He's against IVF, fertilization.
Right.
And it's the exact opposite. I came out immediately strongly in favor. And they do ads. I'm against it. It's wrong. On every single topic. And you know, she changed policies on 15. I've never seen anybody change on more than one. You know, you can maybe get away with one. Her whole life, fracking, every single thing that she was for, the confiscation of guns. She wants a confiscation. Now she's saying everybody should have a gun. In fact, we're going to get her a MAGA cap. I'm going to send her a MAGA cap. But she's changed, and I don't think people are buying it. I don't think people are buying it.
Well, some people are buying it because they want to buy it, because it's blue no matter who. There's a certain percentage of our population that's going to vote Democrat no matter what.
That's true.
They're pressured. There's their community, their ideology. Left is good, right is evil.
I don't understand why. Okay, you have a wall, or you have I built 570 miles of wall. I built a lot of wall, exactly the stuff. But you have a border. What I don't understand is, who would want people to come into our country from places unknown, like sometimes they'll say about a fighter, from parts unknown, right? Remember Haystacks Go from parts, from parts unknown, the oldest, those are the oldest, that's even before you. But who would want people to come in, pouring into our country? We don't know anything about it.
But I want to ask you this. Why do you think they're doing that?
I think because...
Do you think they're trying to buy votes? Do you think they just want cheap labor? Like, what's the idea?
There's a couple of theories. They hate our country, they're stupid, or they want to buy votes. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
They want it. Now, they are trying to get people registered who, don't even know what the country is.
And they're trying to give people amnesty, people that live here, they're trying to give them path.
They want to give them citizenship, and they want to... Well,
and
how about what happened?
If you think about the amount of money that they've given them when they've come here, the food stamps, the benefits that even our poor people aren't getting.
$200 billion, and that's a way low number. That's a way low. You know, it's interesting. New York has always been like, sort of like always looking for money. They've spent $100 billion on this stuff. I don't know where and they're not getting the money from the federal government. It's crazy. And because the mayor came out and said, we can't live like this.
They investigated him.
He gets it. By the way, I called it. I said he just got himself indicted. This group is stupid, but they're vicious. They're stupid people, but they're vicious people.
The 2020 elections, you say you have all this evidence that it was rigged. Why haven't you put this evidence in a consumable form? In what?
Oh, I did. I have books on it. And by the way, books have been written on it. We have an author named Hemingway, who is a great writer. She wrote a book on it, but many books have been written on it. There are books that are... What's happened is judges don't want to touch it. They would say you don't have standing. They didn't rule on the merits. The merits never got there. The judges didn't have what it took to turn over an election.
Let's talk about the potential vulnerabilities for elections and election fraud. One of them is mail-in ballots. The other one is if someone could break into voting machines. If someone can hack voting machines. Those are two huge ones.
So
and
Elon Musk,
done?
I think he said it publicly. I hope he did, because I wouldn't want to be the one. But he's a really smart guy. And he's a very good guy with computers, right? You'd say he's
one of the smartest people alive.
Anybody that can land that 20-story building and perfect and
while he's doing Starlink, while he's
talking
Tesla,
to me
while
about
he owns Twitter,
and then he agrees to Starlink
and he tweets 100 times a day.
He's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
Everything is designed. Everything that you read is designed. Anything that is a sign on the street.
He said to me that unless you have paper ballots, it can never be an honest election. That's a big statement.
It's a big statement.
We should go to paper ballots. You know, France did. They went to mail-in voting, and it was all messed up.
What can
you know
be
the
done?
amazing thing with the machines? So we have the machines. They cost 10 times more. A paper ballot would cost 8%. And they make paper ballots that are all watermarked and everything else. They're very sophisticated. But if you take a look, paper ballots, 8% the cost. And you're done by 9 o'clock in the evening, right? Now we have these sophisticated machine. It goes up to heaven. It goes all over the place and down and around. And they say, we'll need 2 weeks to figure out who the hell won the election.
Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I do. I think it's very crooked. That's my opinion.
You're allowed to have an opinion. What could, let's say you win in November, what can be done to mitigate these problems? What could be done at at the level that the president has power?
Well, if I win, this will be my last election. But I think I owe it to the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I owe it to the country. We have to have fair elections.
So how can you fix that?
You know, Jimmy Carter was in charge of a commission, that many years ago. And they put him and Scoop Jackson and various senators, distinguished people that were retired. And they came up with a report. And the report's primary finding was you cannot have mail-in ballots. Because if it's a mail-in ballot, I went to the voting booth the last time, whatever it was, and I walked in Palm Beach, and I walk in, and they know me. They say, Mr. President, could I see your identification? Yes, boom, here's this, here's that, everything. And then you sit, and they watch you sign, and there's not a lot you can do. I mean, if you wanted to be dishonest, it's sort of,
Right.
If instead of that, I'm going to send them a ballot.
Right.
It has to go through the postal services. It has to go through a lot of people. They mail you houses that, the house was demolished and the people have left. And it's so bad. The one thing with Jimmy Carter, he had a very strong commission. No mail-in ballots. And we're the only one that does elections this way. They've gotten away from it.
And this is it ticked up in a big way after COVID. It used to be like soldiers serving overseas.
They used COVID to cheat.
Yeah. Well, they used COVID to certainly push this mail-in ballot. Another thing
but they used COVID to cheat.
But here's another.
And the last election was a little bit of a. You couldn't even get security guys, big, strong guys to watch. You know what? You'd call them. They call them, and they were afraid to go out. We were in the middle of COVID. Mm-hmm. We were in the middle of COVID, right smack in the middle, and they didn't want to die. They didn't want to catch it. It was like, in a way, it was like a ghost town. And the whole thing, but mail-in ballots are a bad thing.
That certainly is a problem. Mail-in ballots are a problem.
But every
Another
other country,
problem is
other
voter
countries,
ID.
Yeah, a voter ID.
Voter ID is the most bizarre argument that I've never seen anybody articulate in a way that's convincing.
Because
why
they
you
want
don't
to
need
cheat.
voter. Well, it doesn't make sense any other way. I've tried to straw man it, or I tried to steel man it rather. I've tried to look at it from a position like, why would you not want people to have ID? And a lot of the ideas are just ridiculous. You need an ID to get a driver's license.
Okay, but here's now the next step. Gavin Newsom, one of the worst governors in the world, and I used to get along, but I don't get along with him now because he's just too, it's just a whole con job. But Gavin Newsom, the other day signed a bill that you are not allowed to even ask them whether or not they have voter ID.
Now, what could be a charitable reason why anybody
because they
would
want
want
to cheat.
that? Well, that would be the only thing that makes sense.
But that's taken it to the next level.
Right.
Now, you have ID. The Democrat National Convention, when they had it the last time I saw, they had a sign, like a billboard, on the name of the person, where they live, how they live, who the hell their boyfriends are. Every single, and a big picture. That's for they have an ID, a big ID. It was hanging like you were a prisoner. They had these massive cards, everything. And yet when it comes to the vote, in theory, the most important thing we do, okay? When you go to a grocery store, you give ID. But for a vote, it's supposed to be a sacred thing, and it should be a sacred thing. No voter ID. because they want to cheat.
Well, it doesn't make sense in any other way. I've tried to look at it.
There's no other way.
There's no argument that anybody's presented that makes any sense why.
You know the funny thing, Joe? The Democrats, the people, they all think you should have it. In other words, you should have
Yeah.
it. If you go to the people, Mrs. Schwartz, Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones.
Sure.
They say, of course, yeah. Democrats, they say yes. It's the politicians that don't want it. Like Schumer and these guys, they don't want it. Because they want to be able to cheat. Because you know what? If they didn't have it, okay. Who is going to vote for somebody that wants open borders? Who's going to vote for somebody that wants to have men playing in women's sports? You know, I have never had one person come up to me and say, President, you got to do something to allow men to play in women's sports. Have you ever? Just like I've never been called by a pollster. I told you my little theory on pollsters, okay? I'm getting myself in trouble with some of these things, but I don't really care. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, we want to have men play in women's sports. And, you know, I had a funny thing. At a property I own in California, I have a woman who's a very good athlete, and she works there as a manager. And Brian Urlacher, the big Chicago Bears great player, you know, 10-time All-Star, I guess Hall of Fame, a great guy, big, strong guy. And she said, oh, he's one of my favorite athletes. Can I have a picture? And I took a picture and I sent it. And I noticed she was the size of his leg. His leg was bigger than she was. And I put it out. Should men play in women's sport? It was just so ridiculous.
What's one of the most bizarre and polarizing ideas that's promoted by the
But
left?
who wants it? Now, unless you're going to cheat.
I use True Earth detergent eco strips. Of course, I no longer have to measure liquid soap.
In elections, you're never going to get. Nobody wants it.
Right.
I don't think anybody wants it. I've been told everything. You know, you can. Some people want this. I don't know of anybody that wants open borders. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, President, you got to let the world come into our country.
Right.
Now, if they want, so they have 21 million. I think it's much higher than that because you have gotaways. You know, gotaways where they just walk in, they walk in. But, and the other thing you have is human traffickers. You have traffickers, and they traffic in women, and they're going wild now. We used to, you know where you have to look? The trunk of cars. Can you believe it? They put women in trunks. They put 3 women in a trunk. These people are savages. They're horrible. The worst people. And they're making the kind of money they make on drugs, they're almost making on trafficking now. And the thing that's made it hot is the internet. That's what, you know, you think of it almost as an ancient thing, but it's the internet. But who would want to have these things? Who would want to have, there's so many, the transgender operations, where they're allowed to take your child when he goes to school and turn him into a male, to a female, without parental consent. Who wants this? Does anybody want this? I've never heard of anyone, and I can go into 10 different things. The only way they get them is by no voter ID. You can't have voter ID. They don't want any. They want to cheat. There's only one reason, because the voter ID is so basic. It's the most basic thing.
It's very basic.
Who would want this? They want it so they can cheat because their policies are no good. I'll tell you, they're very smart when it comes to that. They're very smart, although they're not smart in terms of politics in a way, because what do they have that people want? They really don't have. They give away a lot of health care, a lot of stuff. But for the most part, their policies are terrible. Their policy on military, she's running on a tax hike. She's going to raise your taxes. You got to hear this. We are going to raise your taxes, and the people clap. But who is going to win? All my life, I grew up with politicians lower taxes. She's politicking that we are going to raise your taxes.
Well, they want to raise, the idea is you want to raise the taxes to the highest earners.
I know, but
they
it
think
really
that
doesn't work
millionaires and billionaires are not paying their fair share.
But it doesn't work that way.
Well, it's a narrative, right? And it's a narrative that appeals to people that are not doing well. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, our problems are these rich people are not paying taxes.
Well, the problem is the rich people are going to leave, and they're going to close up their companies, and then the other people aren't going to have jobs. You know, that's what happens.
It does happen in other countries.
But the whole, because you brought it up, I'll tell you what, we just, he's doing a very good job in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. I don't know if you like him, but not like him.
I don't know.
But you don't know the governor of Virginia. So we have a case where they found thousands of illegal ballots. A judge just ruled that they have to be able to vote. Just happened today, just before I walked in here, I heard. A judge just ruled that you have to keep those people in. They're illegal. They're illegal votes. Now, I think they'll be overturned at the next court. One thing I found, because I had a couple of things that they get overturned a little bit, the system. Because the system, you have to hope that the appellate judges are honest. Otherwise, we don't have a country anymore. Very important. But the whole thing with illegal ballots, it's got to be looked at. You have to have voter ID, and you have to have additional ID. You have to have an ID that shows that you're a citizen of the country.
I agree.
They don't want that either.
I agree. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is the JFK files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I opened them up partially. I was met with, from good people, I mean, look, I mean, good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person. They called me, they said, sir, would rather have you not. And I did open them. But I was asked by some people not to open them. There's a Martin Luther King file, too, by the way, that they'd like to see. I don't know if you know, but there is that. But JFK in particular. So they called me, a lot of good people called me. People that that you would find reasonable people. And they asked me not to do it, so I said, well, we'll close it for another time. But if I win, I'm going to open them up. I'm just going to open enough.
Why didn't you open it up the first time?
Because a lot of times,
what was the hesitation?
Addresses, people that are still living. There are people that are affected. And there could be some national security reason that I don't have to necessarily know about. But some very good, talented people asked me not to do it. I opened it up, and then they said, would it be possible for us to do that a different day?
How much of it did you read into? I think it's going to be just fine to open it. Let me put it that way. I think it's fine. It's going to be time. It's a cleansing, it's really a cleansing. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it immediately, almost immediately upon entering office. Well, the thing, when people look at it from the outside, and you sort of imagine what could be a reason why they would not release those files, it would be there's people that were implicated in the assassination. Yeah. Well, when there are living people, you generally tend not to want to do it. When people are still living. Living people that formerly work for the government. For the government, and living people that were somehow involved in it, and you tend not to do that. But it's time to open them. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to find anything of interest. And I did partially open. I think I've opened 50%, but I was asked not to do it, and I thought that was a reasonable ask. But now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it very soon. There's a lot of interest in it. One of the things that there's a lot of interest in the people coming from space, Yes. And I know you're interested in that. Oh, very interested in that. How much did they tell you about that? A lot. Really? Yeah. What did they tell you? How much can you tell? How's that work? Is it like super top secret? Tell me. Well, based on Hunter Biden, I can say whatever the hell I want, right? But no. But I interviewed a few people. It's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I have never been a believer. I have people that Area 51 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I think it's the #1 tourist attraction in the whole country or something. Area 51 in Las Vegas. Do you know that, right? Sure, I know what it is. So anyway, but it's a big tourist thing. So I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. If you saw them, you'd love to have them. I've had a couple in here. Commander David Fravor. I had him in, who had that sighting in 2004. Very, very compelling with video evidence, radar evidence. Ryan Graves. I don't believe his name, but I interviewed jet pilots that were solid people. Perfect. I mean, great pilots, great everything. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane, And it was round, which is in theory a great shape. So when you were talking to these people, was this something that you were compelled to have conversations about? Was this your personal interest? A little bit. It's not a great interest for me, but it's a little interest.
I get that question as much as almost any question. Do you think that we have aliens coming, flying around or whatever?
What do you think?
There's no reason not to. I mean, there's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life. Because
Mars, we've had probes there and rovers,
yeah,
and I don't think there's any life there.
Well, maybe it's life that we don't know, but
maybe there was life there at one point in time. This is a speculation about Mars, that Mars had an atmosphere at one point in time, a long time ago, that could support life. It also had large bodies of water, but we've had no evidence of even bacterial life that exists on Mars. But the universe is pretty vast.
It's not been a big thing for me. I mean, when I looked at what China did to this, they would have never done it with me, where they put the balloon up. And a lot of people thought for a little while that was one of these things. So,
well, that's a lot of the speculation too, that some of these drones that hover over battleships, that these are Chinese drones, and that they're not UFOs.
They could be also.
There's some super sophisticated.
But I did interview, let's say 3 or 4 guys and without tremendous interest, if you had them, as I said, you'd love to have them as your children. Solid, beautiful people. They said, sir, there's something there.
There's something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few of them.
They're not conspiracy guys.
Well, I mean, just the Commander David Fravor thing in 2004 off the coast of San Diego, they clocked that thing going from 50,000 feet above sea level to 50 in the second.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is.
That's tough to beat.
Yeah, they saw something in the water. It was hovering over that something that was making a disturbance in the water. They got video evidence of this thing. 2 different fighter jets with pilots in them saw it. There's, visual evidence, photographic evidence, video evidence, radar evidence. Whatever the hell it is, it moves in a way that would turn a human being into jello if they were inside of it. The G-force, no one would survive.
Oh,
so what is that? And it doesn't have a heat signature. They don't know what their propulsion system was. But
when you fly in some of these jets, these pilots have to be in great shape.
Oh yeah, I flew with the Blue Angels once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to fly. I guess it's an FA-18.
And those are older machines.
And they're crazy.
When you fly in some of these things,
oh my God.
Amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You got to be special.
But these things that these people are encountering are far superior to what we know of.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's some military or government program that they didn't tell you about?
I think I had a great relationship with the military, basically, but I didn't like certain people. I would have gotten them out if I thought, if the election was different, I would have fired, all of them quickly. Most of them I did fire. Biden should have fired every military person involved with Afghanistan. He should have had a lot of firings. If you look at him, he told Israel not to do anything, and at least Israel's not going to look at a bomb the way they would have been. Think if they listened to Biden. They'd be waiting for a bomb to drop on their head right now. He's been wrong about so much. I guess you'd have to say that she's been wrong too, because she always said they made the decision together. But Israel didn't follow his advice, and I think it was a very, the Middle East is rapidly changing. There are prophets that say the world will come to an end in the Middle East, and we have weapons today that are so scary. When you look, I rebuilt them all, and when you look at the weapons we have today, the biggest threat we have in the world today is nuclear weapons. And we have other weapons too that are devastating, but the nuclear weapons, the biggest threat we have in the world today, and that's what I was talking about de-escalation with both China and Russia. I'm telling you, we were going to de-escalate. They were going to de-escalate. Got to be careful. It's a little tricky playing with them because they say we're going to do it and they don't do it, maybe. But they understood the curse too. It's a curse. It's China's way behind us, but they'll catch us within 5 years.
So let's imagine. Let's say you win in November. What do you do differently, and how do you change this course that it seems we are on for World War III? How do you get us out of Ukraine? How do you stop what's going on in the Middle East? How do you put a stop to this?
Well, it's a very, to me, it's an easy question because I think I can do it easily, but it's a complex question in the sense that the times change, every day changes. Who's winning, who's not winning? I mean, Russia's a war machine. Whether you like it or not, it just grinds along. You speak to people like Viktor Orban. He'll tell you. It's just a big, fat war machine, and that's what's happening. You look at what's happened to Ukraine. If I were there, it would have never happened.
But what could you do now? If you
well,
get into office
right
in January,
now,
what
right
could you do now?
Right now, you would get both of them. I know both very well. And again, I do not want to tell you, for the purpose of looking smart to 5 people that say, oh, he was great. Because if I told you exactly what I do, I could never make the deal. All I could tell you is that I would meet with Putin and I would meet with him, and I know exactly what I'd say to each one of them. And I believe that as president-elect, I would get that war stopped, and stopped fast. We have tremendous power in the United States if you know how to use the power. I stopped other wars just by the use of tariffs. I got Macron of France. Good guy, like a friend of mine, but he's a wise guy. And he's a person that likes France, and he was going to tax our companies. I sent all the smartest guys. I said, Mnuchin, they all failed me. And I said, I'll do it myself. And I called him, I said, Emmanuel, you're taxing American companies. We're not going to allow you to do that. Oh, Donald, I cannot do it. I don't think I could do it. It's already been passed. I said, Emmanuel, if you do this, I'm going to put 100% tariff on your wines and champagnes that come into the United States, and you're going to regret that you ever did it. He said, please, that's not fair. Anyway, within about 2 minutes, he dropped the whole thing, and there was massive amounts of money against American companies. I have to protect American companies.
So why doesn't the Biden administration do this?
Because they're incompetent. They don't know how to talk. Look, they met in Alaska with the Chinese, and the Chinese lectured them about how badly we treat people. Right? Okay? I mean, think of it. You remember that there was like they didn't talk to me that way. They respected me. They respected our country. They don't respect our country. They don't respect Biden. They don't respect her. They're dreaming about her because she's incompetent. She's not a smart person. Look, she can't put 2 sentences together. She talks. I watched her 2 nights. I watched her last night too. It was the same thing. She's not a smart person. These guys are very smart, and they're very streetwise, and they're very tricky and evil and dangerous. And if she becomes the president of the United States, which I can't believe can happen, I don't think this country is going to make it. I don't think we'll ever be. I think just really bad things will happen to our country. And you know what? I look at the outside forces and I say they can all be handled because we have a pot of gold. But we're not going to have that pot of gold to play with anymore. It's a great negotiating thing. I told you, I knocked out this massive car company, going to take all of our car business from Detroit. I knocked it out just by my rhetoric. Rhetorically, I said, they'll never sell a car in here. I'll put tariffs. I don't care. They're 2,000%. They're never going to build that plant.
Is it possible to apply that same thing to the electronics that we use? One of the things that disturbs me greatly is that all of our phones are made overseas, and then some of our phones are made in places like... Yes, and the chips. And some of our phones are made in places like Foxconn, where they have nets around the building to keep people from jumping off the roof because they have so many suicides. Like, wouldn't it be better to have an American-made iPhone where people are paid good wages, they have health insurance, they're taken care of, they can live a good life, where you're not buying a piece of electronics that's cheaper because someone has to suffer in a horrible way that's not even legal in the United States. It's not even legal to have them work that way in the United States, so they get these people to build them overseas.
You do it, but let me just add it. That chip deal is so bad. We put up billions of dollars for rich companies to come in and borrow the money and build chip companies here, and they're not going to give us the good companies anyway. All you had to do is charge them tariffs. If you would have put a tariff on the chips coming in, you would have been able to, just like the auto companies, no different. More sophisticated, but no different. Taiwan, they stole our chip business, okay? They want us to protect, and they want protection. They don't pay us money for the protection, The mob makes you pay money, right? But with these countries that we protect, I got hundreds of billions of dollars from NATO countries that were never paying us. And my biggest fan is Stoltenberg, who just left as the, Director General, as the Secretary General. A good guy. He said Bush came, he made a speech. Obama came, he made a speech. Trump came, he said, you guys aren't paying, you got to pay. they said, will you protect us from Russia if we don't? I said, no, you got to pay. If you don't pay, billions of dollars came in to NATO. When I see us paying a lot of money to have people build chips, that's not the way. You didn't have to put up 10 cents. You could have done it with a series of tariffs. In other words, you tariff it so high that they will come and build their chip companies for nothing. In other words, Joe, you put a big tariff on the chips coming in. I say, you don't have to pay the tariff. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States. We didn't have to give them the money to build a plant. Besides that, they're very rich companies, these chip companies. They stole 95% of our business. It's in Taiwan right now. They do a great job, but that's only because we have stupid politicians. We lost the chip business, and now we think we're going to pay. You can't build it that way. You have to make them spend their money in the United States, and those plants would open up all over, and they'll fund them. We don't have to put up 10 cents. And I am in the process of making a huge speech in about a little while. And you and I, how long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got to make a speech.
Right.
But we'll do it again. I want to do it again with you.
Okay.
You are something. I said, how long will this last? Anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4
How long we do, Jamie? 3 hours.
Good. Well, we'll do it again. I thought it was good. I think it was
great. It was a lot of fun.
You are a fascinating guy, and you've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
Fan, and thank you very much. It's been an honor.
It's been an honor to have you on
I'm going to make
as well.
a great speech, and I'm going to say, and if I'm a little off tonight, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to say I spoke to this guy for 3 hours. Anyway, it's a great honor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
Be careful. This is my seat.
I'm a legend in Hero Wars. And so I don't simply believe there is a God. I've come to know him and trust him.
and I have strong reasons for doing so.
John Lennox is a scientist, mathematician, and Christian apologist. In 2012, he was at Oxford University, where he logically defended the Christian faith and exposed the many unreasonable tenets of atheism. This was one of the most brilliant displays of logic and arguments for God and Christianity. What people are missing is that Richard Dawkins, one of the most notable atheists and opponents of Christianity, was sitting in the audience.
I believe in God. I believe in the supernatural God who created the heavens and the earth. I believe in a God who holds the heavens and the earth in existence. I believe that on the basis of rational evidence, similar to the beliefs held by the founders of this house, who gave this university the motto, Dominus Illuminatio Mea. They saw no contradiction between faith in God and the utmost excellence in rational inquiry. And if I dare mention my alma mater of Cambridge in this holy place, I would remind you that on the door of the Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge are written the words, "Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them." And as we look at the rise of science in the 16th and 17th centuries, Alfred North Whitehead and many others commented that men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not ashamed of being both a scientist and a Christian, because arguably Christianity gave me my subject. What I am amazed at is that serious thinkers today continue to ask us to choose between God and science. That's like asking people to choose between Henry Ford and engineering as an explanation of the motor car. When Newton discovered his law of gravity, he didn't say, "I've got a law, I don't need God." No, he wrote the Principia Mathematica, arguably the greatest work in the whole history of science. Because he saw that God is not the same kind of explanation as a scientific explanation. God doesn't compete. Agency does not compete with mechanism and law. Why is there something rather than nothing? Alan Sandage, the brilliant cosmologist who became a Christian in his 50s, said God is the answer to that question. But people are now so desperate to show that the universe created itself from nothing, which seems to me to be an immediate oxymoron. If I say X created Y, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of Y. If I say X created X, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of X, which simply shows that nonsense remains nonsense even if high-powered scientists utter it. It reminds me a little bit of G.K. Chesterton, who said, "It is absurd to complain that it is unthinkable for an unthinkable God to make everything out of nothing, and then to pretend that it is more thinkable that nothing should turn itself into everything." The heavens declare the glory of God, says the ancient psalm. And we've unraveled a bit of that, seeing the fine-tuning of the fundamental forces of nature. It's something that's so striking to scientists that it demands explanation. And it seems to me that Arno Penzias hit it right. He is the Nobel Prize winner who discovered the microwave background on which a lot of the evidence for the Big Bang is based. He said astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. But I want to come to what I think is one of the fundamental arguments for theism. I take it this house believes in reason. That's why we're all here. And as a scientist, I believe that the universe is rationally intelligible. That is something that has struck some of the geniuses of science as demanding an explanation. Einstein said the only incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it's comprehensible. And Wigner talked about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. How is it that a mathematician thinking in her head in here can come up with equations that seem to fit the universe out there? Well, how is it indeed Because the irony of the atheist position here is evident. My atheist friends, and I have many of them, tell me that the driving force of evolution, which eventually produced our human cognitive faculties, reason included, was not primarily concerned with truth at all, but with survival. And we all know, ladies and gentlemen, what has often happened and still happens to truth when individuals or commercial enterprises or nations feel themselves threatened and struggle for survival. Leading philosopher Alvin Plantinga of Notre Dame says if atheists are right that we are the product of mindless, unguided natural processes, then they have given us strong reason to doubt the reliability of human cognitive faculties, and therefore inevitably to doubt the validity of any belief that they produce, including their atheism. Their biology and their belief in naturalism would therefore appear to be at war with each other in a conflict that has nothing at all to do with God. Yet my atheist friends still insist that it is rational for them to believe that the evolution of human reason was not directed for the purpose of discovering truth. And yet, it is irrational for me to believe that human reason was designed and created by God to enable us to understand and believe the truth. Curious logic. By contrast with that, biblical theism asserts that ultimate reality is personal and intelligent, and the reason science works, and this was the motivating force that drove the great pioneers of science, is that the universe out there and the human mind in here that does the science are ultimately the product of the same intelligent divine mind. Human beings are made, we are told, in God's image, and that means that science can be done. That makes infinitely more sense to me as a scientist than atheism does. Now let me come briefly to ethics. Ethical behavior, like rational behavior, of course, does not itself require religious belief. This is consistent with the fact that humans are created in God's image as rational moral persons. But just as I suggest that rationality cannot be explained without the existence of God, so I dare to suggest that the existence of morality cannot be explained either. As modern science sprang from Judeo-Christian sources, so did the concept of human equality. Listen to atheist Jürgen Habermas, arguably one of Germany's leading intellectuals. He said that universalistic egalitarianism, from which sprang the ideals of freedom and a collective life and solidarity, the individual morality of conscience, human rights and democracy is the direct legacy of the Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love. This legacy, substantially unchanged, has been the object of continual critical appropriation and reinterpretation. To this day, there is no alternative to it. Everything else is just idle, postmodern talk.
Picture this. You're sitting at home alone watching YouTube videos, wondering why you can't find the motivation to do the things you need.
And it seems to me he's hitting the core of something important. Because the value of a human being on which such egalitarianism rests is based not on what the human being can do, but what she's made of, or how she's made in God's image. I never forget speaking on one of my many visits to Russia to a colleague in the Academy of Sciences. And he said, you know, John, we thought we could abolish God and retain a value for human beings. We found we couldn't. And we murdered millions of them. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn has said, if I'm asked, why is it that 60 million of my fellow countrymen were sacrificed? He said, the answer is, we have forgotten God. Science, of course, marvelous as it is limited. Even a Nobel Prize winner, by analyzing a cake, cannot tell why it was made. But Aunt Matilda, who made it, can tell you. She can reveal it to you. But if she doesn't reveal it to you, you'll never know. And that brings me to my next evidence. It's the same with the universe. We can analyze it magnificently. But ultimately, if it has a maker, and I believe it has, only he can tell us what it's all about. And he's done so in the powerful narrative of the Bible, in particular in its analysis of the problem with humanity, not simply in terms of behavioral breakdown between people, but a vertical breakdown of trust between us and the Creator. The unique solution to that problem is not simply in terms of human ethical development, although that's very important, but in terms of something far deeper altogether. The restoration of the fractured relationship with God through the salvation he has brought through Jesus Christ. A radical relationship that empowers us to live ethically from God. And here we reach what for me is the chief evidence, not only for the existence but the nature of God. It is Jesus Christ. He it was who not only taught the golden rule but embodied it, fed the hungry, healed the sick and suffering, and welcomed society's outcasts, brought honor and respect to the marginalized and ashamed. And he's brought forgiveness and peace to multi-millions around the world. He's able to do this, of course, because though he was a man, he uniquely never was only a man, but God become human. The central evidence for this startling claim is, of course, his historical resurrection from the dead that launched Christianity in the world. This is, of course, ladies and gentlemen, a crunch issue. If Jesus rose from the dead, death is not the end and atheism is false. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, Christianity is false. And I remember at Cambridge as a student listening to the brilliant Sir Norman Anderson, a legal expert, going through forensically the evidence from his legal perspective as a brilliant lawyer. And he said at the end of it, the empty tomb then of Jesus forms a veritable rock on which all rationalistic theories of the resurrection dash themselves in vain. Just finally now, as I read the Bible, I do not only find intellectual satisfaction, but I find a great deal of that. I sense the voice of God speaking to me. You say, that's intensely personal. But ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked tonight about belief in God. And I want to strongly emphasize that God is not a theory, he's a person. And if the origination of me qua person is a personal God, then the most exciting thing really is there a possibility of getting to know God? And so I don't simply believe there is a God. I've come to know him and trust him. And I have strong reasons for doing so, because of Christ dying and rising again for me. And that has generated in me a sense of utterly unmerited forgiveness, acceptance, and peace. That has enabled me to face the ugly side of my own nature, and with God's help to do something about it. But it's enabled me to face something else. The hardest problem I face as a Christian is the problem of evil and pain. My niece getting a tumour at 22 that kills her. What do I say to my sister? And this is the hardest problem we face. But it seems to me that atheism here has no answer. Because by definition, atheism believes that human death is the end, so there is no ultimate hope. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, we could stay here till midnight and beyond arguing, as has been done in this university for centuries, what a good God should, might, would, could, if not, possibly might, just could he not have done, and we'll get nowhere. So it seems to me there's another question we can ask, and it's this. Granted that life presents us with a double picture. We see some beautiful things. We see some ragged edges. We see hurt and pain, and we see joy. How can we come to terms with that? And it seems to me here is no simplistic answer, but a window into an answer, and it's this. If it is actually true that Jesus is, as I believe him to be, the Son of God, then we can ask the question, what is God doing on a cross? And the answer comes back at the very least. God has not remained distant from our human suffering, but has become part of it. And the other side of that is this. Because Jesus rose from the dead, he is going to be the ultimate judge. Now here's an irony, because atheism has no ultimate hope of justice by definition. The vast majority of people in the history of the world have died without justice and will die without justice. And if death is the end, then of course they have no hope of ultimate justice. But the promise in the New Testament, guaranteed by the resurrection of Jesus, is that he is to be the judge in the coming day. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are some of the reasons why I believe that God is real and worthy to be trusted. Thank you.
What I love about Christianity is that it is not just rooted in faith, which is
People ask me all the time, Chris, if you could only take one supplement for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
All right.
Okay. How we make our stories, and how do I personally make my stories? I thought, it's funny. I never really thought of the process that I use to write stories and make games, and then I realized I do have a process.
That's not a good start, I'm going to be completely honest. Trying to be unbiased here.
Yeah, you guys are being initiated the hard way.
It's amazing because, like, you would think that your process isn't something that you discover is, like, descriptively just the kind of how I end up doing things. Like, well, I guess that must be my process.
Yeah, no, any writer that tells me I didn't know I had a process until I guess I thought about it, yes, I do have one. I'd be like, what the fuck?
I'm going to say, I'm just going to put it out there, this talk on its own could merit an EFAP.
I bet. Yeah, I've seen from the clips and stuff I've seen it.
We're 40 minutes in now to a new stream, so the cap has been lifted to another 11 hours. I'm not saying you guys have to stay for that long, don't worry.
And I started to put it together. I realized that there are 3 primary points that I use when I create a story for one of our games. So I thought I'd run through those 3 points for everyone here today. So, going to the first point. Kiss.
Kiss. You can tell it's Kiss because there's the lips on the white background.
I ran in my head, like, what could he say that would throw you off? And I was coming up with examples, and then I just see this, and I'm like, yeah, that'd throw me off.
He's really selling himself to the audience here, that he's somebody worth defending.
Is KISS, like, it's KISS, like it stands for something?
Yes, he's going to go into it. One thing I want to mention is that he picked this quote up from Todd, who just said, keep it simple.
Ah, okay. Yeah, see, this is why it's fun for me, because...
Stupid, so he thought that was part of the...
Yeah. I'm so out of the loop, I act as the audience insert of just being like, what the fuck's going on here? And I'm like, alright, fine, let's see what he has to say about this.
Keep it simple, stupid. What does that mean?
Hard.
Well, that means, when I'm coming up with a story for a game, I like to concentrate on strong central themes.
Casablanca.
And,
yeah, this is bold, isn't it?
Well, strong central themes, keep it simple. I already feel like,
They're not quite the same.
Well, because strong central themes could be simple and complicated, and they shouldn't be pushed necessarily in one direction or the other. It depends on the project, you know what I mean? It's like, listen.
It's not what that motto is typically used for. That motto is typically used more in an engineering application than a writing application.
Right.
Yeah, because the less moving parts your machine has, the less points of failure it has.
Right. Yep. Molly, you grew up in the UK. Have you never heard of KISS? It was battered into me as a school. I have never heard of the acronym KISS.
Now, that comment made me think they were talking about the band. Have you never heard of KISS?
Oh, I know KISS the band. I didn't know about KISS the approach to working. You know, keep it simple, stupid. It's new to me.
1 or 2 strong central themes is enough.
It's not something that, like, surgeons say to each other, is it? It's simple, stupid, you know?
I could see that having value. Well, yeah, he's even told us how far we jumped there, but alright, what's number 2?
Going to the second point.
You know what's funny?
Why are you cutting him for time? You gotta leave in all the uhs and ahs and awkward statements. Because that's one of his points, is that he's not awkward. Yeah.
What's funny is if he'd not kept in the part where he said having a strong theme after saying keep it simple, stupid, like if he had just kept it as keep it simple, stupid, I would have had more to imagine that was a good point from him than if he had, stopped him earlier. But now we've moved on.
Part of the test.
So now...
Part of the test, you gotta get the context.
And this is me speaking directly to... Is it Never Knows Best is the name of the YouTuber?
Yes.
probably shouldn't have done that, because now it gives me a sense of someone who's not necessarily, I'm not even necessarily willing to watch all of your video, let alone jump to a different video as context to your video. So when I'm listening to you summarize him as saying, my writing advice is, number one, keep it simple, have a strong theme. Like, that's already confusing to me. And then you're like, number two. Like, what? No, number two. what was number one? Like,
more to the point, why wouldn't you bring these examples up when they're relevant to your argument? Why is this its own section where you're bringing up all the... Like, because who's going to remember this by the time it becomes relevant later on?
Keeping it simple, stupid.
He's keeping it simple, stupid.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, big dummy.
I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this video, though.
Right,
because I gotta remember all these different fucking things that Emil said instead of just bringing it up when it's relevant.
I will say, this statement is all about how you contextualize it.
Well, yeah, because this is a very common bit of writing advice.
This is one of the parts that he's gonna fuck up later on. When he says that Kritosis is changing Emil's meaning, and then he himself never does, changes his meaning. And he leaves the evidence on screen. Because that's the weird part is, there's no subtitles on screen right now. But later on in the video, there's gonna be subtitles when it could be, like, that's why I think it's a test. You can't accidentally include the caption.
It's also the same part where he includes the clip of my video where I'm not saying exactly the thing he's claiming. He's taking one word out of it to misrepresent what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is all the setup, chat. This is all gonna get scary as we move on, because all the payoffs will happen.
What does this mean? Write what you know. Does this mean that if you are working as a dishwasher and decide to become a game developer, you need to make a game about washing dishes? No. Write what you know. For me,
that's a jump ahead.
Yeah.
Personal experiences. So for me, one of my biggest, my first big break at Bethesda was around 2006 when we started working on Oblivion. I was tasked with creating the Dark Brotherhood, which is the Assassin's Guild. And I wanted to sort of leverage the experience I had at Looking Glass Studios working on the Thief games. And Thief is about sneaking around and stealing stuff. I wanted to sneak around and
Thief has stealing stuff in it.
I thought that.
Thank you.
I thought to myself, how could
what was that inclusion? That went nowhere.
I was about to ask you guys, why did he just, like, he sounded like he was about to go somewhere, and then he talked about Thief for a bit.
No, that's how Emil talks. That's the whole 40-minute presentation is just like random tangents, and then never later in this video is going to go, it's not full of random tangents, all these things lead to somewhere, but he didn't think so, because he decided to cut part of it out.
Also,
weird
I'm going to say he's
a PowerPoint is to keep you on track.
If Emil's butchering his speech, he is butchering that butchering. Like, we are getting, the cuts are not helping this.
I'm getting a bit lost.
Yeah.
It's confusing on its own. The way he's edited it has made it even more confusing. Absolutely.
I'm curious if he's going to include the clip.
An evil Assassin's Guild, to my own personal experiences. It's like, I don't know what this is, but I do know. I know the Catholic. I know the Catholic Church.
Wait.
I don't know much about an Assassin's Guild, but I do know the Catholic Church. And every Protestant here. Those filthy papists are up to it again.
That's an interesting thing.
Oh, but I'm absolutely the one that brings up that Emil's Catholic for no reason. Sure.
Actually, the Dark Brotherhood in Oblivion.
I'm sorry, it's just so funny to be like, Dark Brotherhood, Catholics,
Every single stream that I've ever done where that clip played, the chat loved it.
Yeah, because it's funny.
That is
really
hilarious.
funny.
Dude, that's not too far away from being like, I designed this alien race. I'm familiar with the Vietnamese. Like, you can't say that. That's fucked up. And like I said, some YouTubers can fall into these traps.
I'll tell you, I admire that Catholic confidence.
Is actually
keep it simple, stupid. Like, maybe you kept it a little too simple there, buddy.
Connections to the Dark Brotherhood.
Evil take.
No,
Catholic Church.
That's a point. Oh no, he's gonna make the point. Sorry.
The third point is the longest point.
No, he cut it out.
Wow, he cut it out. No, go back to the Catholic Church.
I was gonna say that was really entertaining.
Okay, so what he was going to explain was how the Holy Trinity is tied to the Dark Brotherhood with Sithis and the Night Mother and all that. And he completely cut that out? No fucking shot, dude.
Wow.
You know?
I wanted to hear that. That actually was probably going to be better than anything in this shitty
We haven't even gotten to him ripping into you guys for the lies that you've told as well. Crazy.
And Stormcloak is basically tied together.
Great games are played and not made. So this is...
I get the sentiment, but they do have to be made. Also, I was going to say, I understand exactly what he's saying, but this is the quote that I hate. Quotes like this,
I hate great games are played and not made. That's almost like one of those, like, something is obviously retarded. You must mean something completely different.
Yeah, if he's going to start talking about the value of playing it as you're developing it, and you're like, you mean playing it as you're making it?
Is that what he means by this? Because I actually don't understand what he's trying.
I assume he's saying that the devs need to be able to play and enjoy it as they're developing it, so that they know.
Yeah, I would call that. I mean, it would be like credit. Thinking that ML.
But I mean, playtesting is part of making a game.
You know what's part of making a game? Making a game.
Playing the game is making the game. The game is the design.
He is badly trying to explain the iterative process. That's the problem.
Why was that? See, that quote just doesn't capture it as far as
Now, a real one say for his PowerPoint, game design is an iterative process. But if you're ML, you say great games are playing not made.
That's what he's looking for, right? It's like catchy little quotes to be like, haha, see, look how catchy and cute these are.
By the way,
let's go back to the Catholic Church, right?
Yes.
If you really want people to understand, you don't use parable cards. Just tell them what it is.
Well, like someone said, let him finish instead of speculate on what he's gonna say. This is a quote and a design title for point 3 of how to write. So don't make this the quote. Make it someone else.
And also, this is the 5th time that I'm doing this thought.
But who the fuck, like, who does, like, why would you want it to be a quote that only makes sense when you give context to it? Like,
Once it only makes sense once you explain it, then there's something wrong there.
Because I feel like all the great famous quotes of history, you know, it doesn't require like a speech or someone to like in real time explain to you what the quote really means. You know,
I understand what you mean in this. It can mean that an elaboration is super cool and helpful. Yeah. So that the quote stands on its own, especially if it's meant to be 1, 2, 3. The deepest things that you remember. I don't know. Because like this quote on its face is just like bizarre to me.
Well, he's picked up a new one. He's picked up a new one since then. He has on his desk written, "It is what it is."
I find more value in that than I do in that. I was actually going to say as well, like, you know, like, work hard, play hard. I feel like that would really happen when you ever try to say better than this. Like, because a lot of people say, like, you gotta let him explain. It's like, guys, we're not ending the stream in a few minutes, okay? We're going to be a problem. This is why I always like assume that like we've got some new people, and that's just wonderful. Welcome, but like
happy that you are here. We are thrilled.
We're covering everything.
Your day.
We're gonna give you our perspective on this slogan before it's given context and after it's given context. Just one of them. Both of them. And that's assuming this video gives us the context. We've been cutting around the line.
Yeah, what you did pick up is that he started this point of listing them out at like 3 minutes, and we're 15 minutes now into the presentation.
We're also totally not into the video, and just saying, right? Not been a great experience so far.
This is a point for the studio. This is one out of the studio, but it has several
it just works.
Means that we use the iterative
I told you.
Literally like every fucking
I know this shit.
Yes.
I practically know this by heart.
The iterative process, meaning that we have a thing, and then we test it, and then we make another thing based on what we learned from the thing.
We didn't use it, we just coded it.
Like, I need to control my anger because we're so fucking goodly, but like, it's a normal fucking thing that you gotta have to make a video game.
This is the key to the success of Bethesda. We play the game, and then we play it, and then we make changes, and then we play it. We iterate. You know,
informs a lot of why their games are the way
It's
they are.
not. I assume the funny isn't that they do it. The funny is that they think that's what invention is.
Yeah.
Like our games. Like, wow.
The funny is also when they realize they have a huge fucking problem and do nothing about it. Which goes into in this section in the actual speech.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
I think maybe it's just a sort of confidence that selling these games as much as they've sold. Maybe it just makes you really overwhelmed that you can just say anything about them.
That was Derek's point. That was Derek's point in his video on this, was that Emil has been insulated to outside opinions, so he's only ever been told that he writes masterpiece after masterpiece. So that's why he has so much big dick energy about this.
My mom says I'm a very pretty boy, and I live one a very handsome.
But it is kind of amusing to be like, do you want to know how to write a game that has a story like Fallout 4? You're like, well.
Wow, big boy.
And he's like, make sure you play the games you're making. You're like, yeah. Yup.
We are very engaged things. We're actually at a state now in the development of the studio. We don't have a lot of extensive design documentation.
There we go.
Roughly after we hit Fallout 3, the design docs that we had became outdated because we knew we needed to get stuff in the game to follow them.
So, and this is the thing, this is going to get complicated because I want to share, like, how I feel about quotes like this, and then you guys are going to be like, oh, it gets way worse, or oh, you know exactly what, but like, just hearing what he says there, I'm just like, there should never be a complete outdating of any kind of prep that you make for a game at a fundamental level. For example, when they're making like Doom or Quake, they're going to be like, okay, the fundamental art design we want to have here is a combination of like medieval plus Lovecraft plus like a sci-fi marine type of thing. Keep those in mind whenever you're building anything. There's not supposed to be a time where you go, that's been outdated, sorry, delete. You're like, what?
It means that your original concept was really bad, or you just stick with it, which is like, what's the point of having it?
Again, it's one of my preferences is just that there's not supposed to be a 100% outdating of all documents. I can understand how some would be outdated, but not all.
So it's not terribly uncommon for design documentation to be updated because they'll just find stuff along the way that's more fun than their original idea.
Yeah.
So that's fine on its own. But throughout part of the process, you have to keep that documentation up to date until you're in. The book I'm currently reading says until you're in alpha, you should keep your documentation up to date, which was about the development of World of Warcraft, which had a couple players. 1 or 2. 3. Yeah, peaked at 12 million concurrent accounts, but like,
I don't think it feels weird to hear him say this, but not be like, you know, obviously we have like a fundamental design doc that includes some of the big things that are going to be relevant to like all aspects, but that there are elements that will change so much as we progress that we don't keep them as close to heart, I imagine, compared to smaller teams making smaller games or something like that. And this speech seems like a good time to do it, but again, I'm just talking from having heard clips being chopped up in this video to include context for what I'm about to hear later. Still pretty weird. You'd think these context clips would come in after we hear the lines, not before.
Yes.
But here's what Emil really said.
Remember the nuance of everything that he's saying because it will be relevant later. I hope you took notes. Because it will be on the test.
Changes, we needed to iterate on it. So we would have to extend the 50-page design documents that we're going to be out.
I have been told by a few game developers that 50 barely scratches the surface.
But I also would argue there's no fucking way that they're actually completely out of date.
Yeah.
It's like way out of date. If the design doc says you're making an RPG, does that get outdated?
Like, there's something in RPG anymore. It's not like a QLLASAT RPG. It's very different.
I was going to say the requirement that actually make RPGs, which they haven't done in depth.
Oh my god.
Okay, play the role of Master Chief.
Yeah, someone in chat mentioned, like, potential little exaggeration. Like, is that not the kind of thing you need to avoid exaggerating?
Yeah, in a speech like this, not so badly if he just fucking explained it at any point.
Well, when you're telling everybody how we design things going forward, then you say, like, we have a design fundament.
There we go. Had to end on positive. Had to end on positive. Couldn't end on loss. Unacceptable.